by taking roll call with you during the meeting and who that person is, son, daughter, etc., which is required under the right to know law. So I'll start off. I'm Langdon Plummer. I'm chair of the Exeter Planning Board, and I'm in my house or my apartment, and nobody's with me. Pete Steckler, let's go with you, please.
Hi, Pete Steckler, alternate, and I am alone.
Okay, Gwen English. Excuse me.
Gwen English. I am alone at the moment, but family members may be coming through the room periodically.
Okay. All right. Mark.
Yep, I'm here. Mark Detour, alternate, and I'm alone at this point.
Thank you. Nancy Belanger.
Nancy Belanger, alternate, and I'm alone in the room.
Jen Martell.
Jen Martell, and I'm alone in the room.
Thank you. Aaron Brown.
Aaron Brown, alone in the room.
Thank you. Molly Cowan.
Molly Cowan, Select Board Rep. My whole family is here right now, but they are going to bed. So I will be alone in the room very soon.
Turn the bed down for me. Pete Cameron.
Pete Cameron, alone in the room. My wife may pass through every once in a while, but she's going somewhere else.
Okay. That's what you think. All right. And our town planner, Dave Sharples.
Dave Sharples, I'm in the room alone.
Okay. John Gruder is last regular member. He's not here tonight, so I think I'll ask Nancy Belanger to please act this evening. And we will first take up the minutes of our last meeting, which was April 22nd, 2021. So the floor is open to discuss those. Okay, there. Any comments? Do you have anything, Gwen?
I do not.
Okay.
That took a while.
How about Pete Cameron?
No, they're clean as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Well.
You want a motion?
Yes, please.
I move that the minutes of the, what meeting was it?
April 22nd.
April 22nd.
Be approved in the form in which submitted.
I'll second.
Thank you. I'll call roll call vote. Gwen English.
Yes.
And Nancy Belanger.
Yes.
Jen Martell.
Yes.
Aaron Brown, please.
Yes.
Molly Cowan.
Yes.
And Pete Cameron.
Yes.
And I say yes. Thank you very much. Take care of that. All right. New business and hearings. Continued public hearing.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I interrupt you for 2 seconds?
Certainly.
Are we approving the May 7th site walk minutes?
Were those also in the?
Yeah, they were. It was just a single page.
Oh, those are the sidewalk, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just didn't know if those should be done.
Yes. So yes. Anybody like to make a motion on those minutes for the sidewalk? Please.
I would make one change to
Okay.
the minutes. So I guess it started at 9, ended at 11:07. Does that seem right? Hey, was that right? You took the minutes, I think.
Yeah, I looked at my phone.
Just want to make sure. It was a long walk.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was just over 2 hours.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay. Second, somewhere?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So I'll call for the vote, please. I'm not sure just who was all off the top of my head, but the minutes will show that. But anyway, Gwen, will again to start with you, please.
Yes.
And Nancy Belanger.
Okay, I always get a little, so I wasn't there. Should I abstain or is it okay?
Just
A lot of
abstain.
us weren't. I'll abstain.
Yep. Jen Martell
Yes.
and Aaron.
Yes.
Molly, I don't know that you were there or not, but
I was, and yes.
that's right, you were there. And Pete Cameron was not there.
So I'll abstain.
Okay. And I was there and I vote yes. So that minutes is approved. Thank you.
Lang,
Picking me
Lang,
up. Yes.
Mark Detour and Pete Steckler are also there if you want them to vote.
Okay. We can do that. Mark,
Yes.
would you like to vote? Okay. And Pete, of course. Steckler.
If you're activating me, I'll say yes for this
I'm
one.
activating you, but
Thanks.
don't get excited. All right. So those in attendance certainly approve those minutes. Thank you very much. Okay. We all set now, Gwen, to move ahead? Vice Chair. All right. Continued public hearing on the application of Brian Gassett for the lot consolidation, subdivision, lot line adjustment, wetland continual use permit, shoreland continual use permit, and site plan review for proposed 16-unit single-family condominium open space development and associated site improvements on properties located off Tamarind Lane and Cullen Way. Subject properties are situated in the R1 low-density residential and NP neighborhood professional zoning districts. Tax map parcel 96-15 and number 81-53 and 96-9. And this planning board case number 20-2. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'll just mention that
yes, Dave. please.
Mr. Gruda has arrived, so now you have 7 regular planning board members.
Okay, Mr. Gruder, could you
Yes,
introduce
sir.
yourself, please?
What's that?
Introduce yourself, please, and tell us who's with you.
John Gruder, and for the time being, I'm in the room alone.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. And thank you for your service, Nancy.
Yes, sir.
Well, if you, Nancy, if you want to,
We're just starting it. John, you haven't missed anything other than the meeting minutes. You're good.
the best part, huh? Thank
Okay.
you.
So, Dave, would you like to start us off, please? Turn your microphone on, please.
I always have. You called the case 20-2, correct, Grissett?
Yes, I did.
The applicant submitted plans for a lot consolidation, subdivision, lot line adjustment, wetlands conditional use permit, shoreline conditional use permit, and site plan review for a proposed 16-unit single-family condominium open space development and associated site improvements on properties located off Tamarind Lane and Cullen Way. At the February, just a little background first to bring us up to speed. At its February 11th, 2021 meeting, the board voted to accept the yield plan as presented for a total of 18 units. 16 of them are part of a single-family condominium open space development. One is an existing house that the lot will be reconfigured and will be an individual lot and not part of the condominium. And the final 18th unit will be an individual conventional lot at the end of Cullen Way, meeting the minimum requirements of a conventional lot in the district. So 16-unit single-family condo open space, one existing house, and one additional lot at the end of Cullen Way.
Thank you.
The board granted a waiver from section 7.13 for relief from the requirements to provide a yield plan that shall not require a variance from existing zoning ordinance. Subsequently, after that, the applicant provided their response comments to the first TRC and UEI comment letters. The applicant met with the technical review committee for a second review via Zoom on April 1st, 2021. And those comment letters and applicant responses were provided in the last meeting packet. The applicant did appear before the Conservation Commission at its April 13th, 2021 meeting for review of the wetlands and shoreline conditional use permit applications, and the commission was not able to complete their review of the CUP applications at that meeting and tabled it until their May 11th meeting because they wanted to be sure they had adequate time to review and process the information provided by the applicant while deliberating on the criteria. The applicant returned to the Conservation Commission on May 11th for further discussion, and the CONCOM voted to recommend approval of both the CUP, both of the conditional use permit applications for the wetlands and the shoreline. A copy of the memo from the CONCOM chairman, Andrew Koff, dated May 18th, 2021, was provided in your packet. The planning board, as you mentioned earlier about the site walk, because we approved the minutes, the planning board and CONCOM held a joint site walk on May 7th. And during the site walk, the applicant explained that the prime wetland boundary was incorrectly shown upon the yield plan that the board previously accepted. Subsequently, a revised yield plan and open space development site plans dated 5/11/21 have been submitted addressing the recommendations from DPW, CONCOM, and at the request of the applicant. These plans are enclosed for your review were enclosed in the packet, along with a letter of explanation from Attorney Passe dated May 5th, 2021. Also enclosed is a supplemental filing from Attorney Passe dated May 20th, 2021, further addressing the concerns and issues raised relative to the wetlands boundary appeal requested by the abutters. In addition to these materials, I also did receive a letter via email from the abutters that I sent along, that I forwarded on to the board after receiving it earlier today. There is, it's a 5-page letter. It was not in your packets because I received it, I forget, early afternoon, and I forwarded it to the board as soon as I got it. So here the process moving forward, you had already accepted a yield plan, but the applicant noted that there was a mistake made on the prime wetland boundary shown on the previously approved yield plan. So they have corrected that boundary and now contend that it meets the 2005 adopted prime wetland boundary. But they had to revise the yield plan showing that. So we're kind of back to the yield plan process. And per our ordinance, we review and accept a yield plan before we move on to the open space development plan. So what I would suggest the planning board do is have, the applicant speak about the changes that were made to the revisions that were made to the yield plan, and then the board consider the yield plan. And if and when the board acts upon that, then they can move on to the open space development plan. There is a third-party wetland delineation request. I think you can do that in either scenario. Usually you do it during the open space development or the subdivision plan. And you can, you could just review the yield plan and then move on to the open space development plan and have the conversation about the third-party review of wetlands delineation, or however the board wants to do that. So that's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. Happy to answer any questions, and I will be here for that.
Okay, I think I agree with you. Let's deal with the yield plan and prime wetland question there. So, Attorney Passe, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Good to be with all of you. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you fine. Where are you today?
Okay, I'm in Exeter.
Okay. Oh, there. I didn't see it on my screen. Sorry.
Where am I virtually? In my box, I'm like the second from the right on the top,
yes,
on the top row.
Yeah, you were there.
Okay. Good to be with you. I'm joined by Brian Grisette, who is not in front of a camera, but in the same room, and then also by Jim Gove, of course, our wetland scientist from Gove Environmental, who is joining us, and Christian Smith from Beals Associates, who is here as well. So I really appreciate Dave's thorough timeline to just bring everybody up to speed. I was intending on covering that, but I won't, because that's great. From our perspective, and of course, subject to the planning board's thoughts and comments, we have a similar proposal for tonight. We wanted to address the new yield plan. We've talked about the yield plan at great length. We don't intend to give an entire presentation on it because there's just one very minor change based on the prime wetland delineation issue. And then beyond that, we were hoping to address the third-party review question and then present our site plan. We don't intend to present the conditional use permit application or the site plan review waivers until the next meeting, which we hope the planning board will schedule for 2 weeks from today, the 10 June meeting. And then in advance of that meeting, we'll file, for the purpose really of just ensuring the administrative record is complete, a response to the abutter letter that we understand was filed today. We don't intend to respond to that tonight other than to simply say it contains mostly arguments, allegations which have been raised and addressed already. So if it's okay with the chair and the board, we'll just give a very brief overview of the yield plan issue. I have 2 minutes of points to make, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Smith, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Right on. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So our perspective on this issue is really outlined in our 5 May and then our 20 May letters. And to summarize, the prime wetland buffer depicted on the Grisette's original plans contained a minor 73-foot discrepancy from the town's 2005 prime wetlands map. And this mistake is not the result of a plotting error or otherwise a mistake of the development team. It's really the result of a bad photo interpretation of the vegetation and topography by the town's environmental consultants in the early 2000s when they were plotting the 2005 prime wetland map. So we've provided a lot of analysis. Mr. Grisette provided a very long analysis after substantial research, and that was included in our 20 April letter, which really goes sort of line by line to the basis for the mistake and why it was repeated. But regardless, we have corrected the depiction of the prime wetland boundaries on the plans. The only change to the yield plan that was already accepted by the planning board back in February was a change to the size of lots 5 and 6, which are 2 of the lots along the southern boundary of the parcel next to the railroad. And as adjusted, the building areas for the lots are still significantly exceeding the 25 by 25 foot buildable area standard that the planning board has applied to yield plans in the past. And nothing else on the yield plan has changed. All the accesses are the same. Mr. Gove's expansive discussion about the wetlands and the relief that would be requested and provided to accommodate that standard subdivision development is still good. So as a result of that minor change, we would request tonight that the planning board address the new yield plan and vote to accept it because it remains reasonably achievable, feasible, and viable for the reasons that this board previously found. So I will turn it over to Christian. I think he's going to throw up a picture of exactly what changed so that the planning board can appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Christian Smith from Beals Associates. If it's okay with you, I'll just share screen here and kind of walk through a couple of plans to show you what we found and where we ended up with the yield plan, if that's okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I think the best place to start would be to look at an exhibit that I can blow this up a little. It shows graphically the difference. So what we see here is the edge of the prime wetland delineated here on the ground by Jim Gove, picked up by the land surveyors. And then the overlay or underlay, if you will, of the town's GIS map. This is what is depicted on that. So you can see there's our 70 plus foot discrepancy between the kind of fictitious mapping that appears on the GIS and reality. However, we went through the iteration of revising these 2 lots, figuring out the building plan, and I'll remind you what the original, no, that's the current one. I'm sorry. I grabbed the wrong one. So the approved yield plan down in that location, I'll get it nice and tight so hopefully everybody can see it on the computer screens. So, all right, again, here's the edge of the prime. Here's the 100-foot setback. and the resultant building envelopes between lots 5 and 6. And then when we overlay the actual GIS mapping prime wetland, you can see it runs out to this location. Again, there's the differential between the two, and it tightens up the building boxes a little bit, but we still depict, very viable building envelopes for both of those. We show the 25-foot square boxes in there as we had for the rest of the units, and that is the sum total of the changes to those yield plans. I can either leave this up, Mr. Chairman, if we want to discuss it with the plan up, or I can take it down for further discussion.
Let's leave it up for now so that
okay,
we know what we're looking at. So, any discussion on the part of the board? Please, and I can't see everybody, but that's okay. Let me see. Any hands up here?
Mark Titor has his hand up.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just want to recuse myself from this case.
Okay, thank you. Now, any other board members have a comment about this? Seems to be pretty clear to me. No hands? Okay. Being a public hearing, I guess I would open the floor. Is there anybody, Dave, that you've seen from the public that would like to speak?
Not at this point, but I would just alert the 11 attendees that I see to raise your hand if you would like to speak on the revised yield plan.
Or basically this particular part of it, of the corrected revision. Yep.
Ann Flaherty has her hand up.
Okay, Ann?
Hi, I'm Ann Flaherty at 8 Tamarind Lane. I'm sure my name and my husband, Patrick, were familiar to you guys now. We're abutting the main development site where the open space development would go. And we would just like to say we support the approval of this this yield plan because it's really very similar to what it was before. It doesn't seem substantively different in any way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is John Elliott has their hand up.
Mr. Elliott, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair Plummer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. This is Jonathan Elliott, 6 Tamarind Lane, and want to say appreciate the time you and the board spend in this capacity, and thank you for that. As an abutter, I'd like to speak to the letter, if I could, submitted to the board earlier today by some of the residents in the neighborhood. I believe the letter stands on its own, but I'd like to note to the board what I see are some significant points highlighted in the letter. One of which I think speaks to the wetlands delineation.
Yeah, if you could keep your focus on the wetlands delineation, because that's really what we're speaking about. Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think there are a couple things though, that I'd like to point out, but we'll start with that. So if you refer to the technical and process issues, item E, I think noted in our letter regarding the wetlands delineation, I'd like to say that having lived in our home here for over 15 years, I've witnessed the sensitive nature of the Scammon Brook in the areas upstream from this development. With minor blockages in the stream creating really significant flooding issues across Tamarind, in the neighbors' yards, as well as to the Wool's scrap yard there. That's really an eyesore and an issue. And with the recent determination and that wetlands have not been properly identified since the start of this process, based on a quote, a photo interpretation of a year 2000 photo, unquote, I think is what I heard. We feel it's prudent that the wetlands be reviewed by a third party to confirm this proposed development is based on current site conditions, and not, 20-year-old photos, and will not create an unanticipated impact to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I can address that, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify a point. The wetlands that have been delineated and field located by the survey are what we originally went with. The photo interpretation is what is the town's GIS map, which is what we're using because that differs from reality, which is not atypical. I mean, if you look at a large scale soils map, it's not going to turn out to what Jim Gove delineates out in the field, because these are actual soils investigations, vegetation evaluations for the 3 criteria, the ground cover, the bushes, and the trees. And what Jim Gove showed is without question the correct and current prime wetland boundary and wetland boundary throughout the site. But the photo interpretation error happened by the town's reviewer, and that's why the map online differs from what's in the field. I mean, you can see the shape of the wetland through here is very similar. It's just off a bit in this particular location. So that I just wanted to point that out. That was not a photo interpretation error on our part. It was a photo interpretation error on the soil scientist and wetland scientist that did the mapping for the town GIS map back in 2005. And Mr. Grissett, I believe, has forwarded a very well-researched memo into what those errors were and how that took place.
Neil Blanken.
Thank you.
Has
Neil, did you say?
Correct, Neil, yes. And John Elliott also has his hand up. John, if you have that, we'll come to you again. If not, you can lower your hand. Thank you. He did. Okay, so it's Neil Blaken.
Okay, Neil Bacon, please. Floor is yours, Neil. Are you there, Neil? I guess Neil's not with us. Anyone else?
Oh, he's coming. I see his. Yeah, he's unmuted now.
Okay, that could be a problem, Neil.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So, just very quick comment, and thank you for the time to speak. The neighborhood, the abutters, has spent an enormous amount of time and effort on this project, as you know. We are not against development in principle. We know that Mr. Grissett has a right to develop his land. We made him an offer last year. We're simply asking the planning board to take the time to get it right and not take the developer's word for it. Thank you very much for the time today.
Thank you. Okay. Any comment from board members?
Pete Steckler has his hand up.
Pete.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think I understand what's going on in this particular situation where the actual wetland line is well to the right in this screenshot of where the prime wetlands line is. So if you actually buffered the actual wetland delineation line, which it sounds like they did originally, there's no issue. I guess my question is, are there other places where, in this case, it sounds like the development team buffered off of Mr. Gove's line. Are there other places where they didn't buffer off of Mr. Gove's line and buffered off of the mapped prime wetlands line because that was, advantageous for whatever reason. And I guess I'm looking at, I think the blue dotted line, is that the delineated wetland line, or is it the black? I can't tell what's going on here, but it kind of looks like the blue dotted line. So up where the number 6 is, lot 6, there's a wetland hatch symbol there. And then just below that, there's a dotted blue line. So I guess my question is the blue dotted line the wetland delineation line? And in that case, it looks, if that's the case, which I'm kind of asking the question, should the prime wetland buffer be buffered off of that blue line? Or did they maintain the buffer off of the originally mapped prime wetland line? In that case, I guess, does that make any sense? Like they buffered off of their line where it worked for them originally, and maybe not off of their line where it, put them at a disadvantage. I'm just trying to sort this out in my head. Does that make any sense, I guess, to the development team?
I think I can answer the question. The prime wetland, the former prime wetland line is now delineated by these dots, the dotted line, because that is now simply a soil type. It's a very poorly drained soil versus a poorly drained soil. The blue line that you see that we came up with a couple of months ago when we were working with the board, I think Gwen had asked us to put some colors on things so it stood out better. So that is a poorly drained wetland line, which has nothing to do with the prime wetland. This is the prime wetland as shown on the town map. I'm sorry, this is the prime wetland as it's shown on the town map. And this is the prime wetland as it was shown by Jim Gove based on very poorly drained soils out here. So no, there wouldn't have been any advantage. I mean, you can see it's limited to right here, Peter. That's the sum total of the prime wetland, that and to the right. So the buffer that you see here is off of the poorly drained line, which is a completely different set of setbacks. It's the 40-foot no disturb, the 50-foot septic, and then I believe it's a 75-foot, if I'm not mistaken, building and parking. So if I pan out a little, Peter, maybe I can help you out here. So the originally delineated prime wetland is this poorly drained soils line here, which you can see it's very close to what the map was, or the photograph map was. This is what the actual photograph map is. And in this location, Jim's line is actually wider than what the photograph shows, or the photograph interpretation. So it's really a moot point up here because there's nothing proposed anywhere near it. Really, the only place that this affected anything was down at this point where the misinterpretation by the folks that put the map together for GIS made errors back in 2005. And that's really it. So again, this blue line, that is poorly drained soils. This line up here is the very poorly drained soils, and this is the town's GIS prime wetland mapping.
Okay, and just one clarification. So the blue line is poorly drained soil jurisdictional wetland.
Edge of wetland, yes. Yes, okay. Sir.
Thank you.
Aaron Brown has his hand up.
Aaron.
Thanks, Lonnie. Christian, while you got the mic, I just want to be clear on that. And I think Pete Steckler was talking about, was there a place in the wetlands work and the discrepancy where it ended up being to the applicant's quote unquote disadvantage. And I guess that is the case here, right? I mean, it is to your disadvantage.
Yeah. And this is the only area where it is. Because that's the only thing we're talking about is the formerly delineated, very poorly drained soils versus the town's prime wetland map, because those are the two apples we're comparing here. Everything else, we're holding all the absolute edge of wetland delineated buffers, and it is all perfectly legit.
And that further to the abutters questions, or to just address their concerns, I wanted to ask if Mr. Gove could speak to the methodology he went through when he delineated these wetlands that are in front of us, how much impact old aerial photos had on his work, and how much he did in the field, if he's possible to talk to. Thanks, Christian.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Jim Gove, Gove Environmental Services. We don't use, when we're delineating wetlands, we don't use previous either aerial photos or previous delineations that were done. We are in the field. We basically sample each location for vegetation, evidence of wetland hydrology, and hydric soils. And when I say each location, we're looking at each flag location as we place it there. And we're essentially looking at all three parameters. So everything that you see that we have here, that's the blue line, that has been vetted in the field only. We don't even locate them. Essentially, a surveyor comes in and locates these boundaries and places them onto the plat, the survey plat. So, in essence, we essentially are in the field. We do the work in the field. We're looking at the three parameters of delineation methodology straight out of the Corps of Engineers Wetland Delineation Manual and Supplement. We, with the exception of maybe looking at aerial photo just to make sure we know where we are, we do not utilize previous delineations or previous aerial photo interpretations in order to do our on-the-ground work.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Anyone else?
John Elliott has his hand up.
Okay, John, please. Did you unmute, John? Are you there, John?
He's there, but I'm not sure, because I think Exeter TV needs to give him, permit. Oh, no, here he is. Yep.
Okay.
And just unmute yourself and he's good.
Thank you, sir. Just follow-up question to that, and no disrespect by any means meant here, but I'd ask this question: if all of this work is done in the field and sampling in the field, and then how does something like this happen after a year and a half? It just doesn't make sense. And I'd say Neil put it very well, very bluntly. We're just asking that this get recorded correctly, right? And we proceed prudently. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can address that, Mr. Chairman. It's quite simple. We rely on the flags that Jim and Jim's crews hang. Those are field located by the surveyors, plotted on a plan. And, when it was compared, if you're just looking at the town's map and you look at this feature, you're thinking, wow, that's pretty much right on. It was only after the Conservation Commission hearing that we thought to download the actual GIS map, create an image out of it, and underlay it based on the boundaries of our property, and realize that in this location there was a discrepancy.
Thank you.
Langdon, for clarification, I think there's a misunderstanding. The prime wetland, where everybody's getting mixed up, the prime wetlands map is a feature that was created 40 years ago by the legislature so that the town could provide extra buffers on select high-value wetlands within the town. And the procedure was the town would go out, they do whatever mapping they did. Then that year, back in '83, they used the 1977 Rockingham County soil maps for very poorly drained soils. They basically just followed those soil lines. The procedure was then they take that map, they had hearings, and then it was sent to the voters to approve, and it became essentially, it's an overlay zoning map, which gives this special buffer protection for those prime wetlands as labeled by the town. In 2002-03, they started the process all over again. Conservation Commission contracted with John West. He contracted with a photo expert interpreter. The best technology that they decided to use was not just the soil map, but they used the photo interpretation. The latest photos they had were 1995. And there is, as anybody who was on the sidewalk, as Jim explained, that there's distortion within those photos. But when the photo interpretation happened, they drew on this photo the line where they thought it was. And at the scale, what we're talking about is a 1/8 of an inch in that line, that scale, works out to approximately 80 feet. So when that delineation by the aerial photo interpreter, that was then given to cartographics to then plot onto a town tax map. And once again, the scale is immense. And so just a small fraction could cause it to change. And essentially what happened was the photo interpretation placed that where they thought the edge of very poorly drained soils was in this one area. It got placed an 1/8 of an inch, well, a little less than 1/8 of an inch up the uplands. So it's a zoning overlay map. It's not really a delineation. The actual delineations, as the planning board members know, in the old days, what we did was we used the Rockingham County soil maps, but because of their inaccuracies, it was determined to then require HIS mapping. And that's exactly what Jim did, is he went out and, as Jim was describing the process, they go along and they're using the 3 criteria and they're just following where they determine the line for the actual wetlands is. But in the case of why is this an error versus not the soil delineations, it's because they're not related. The prime wetlands boundary has nothing to do with soil delineation. It has to do with essentially drawing maps on photos and having the town vote to approve. So that's why they're not connected. So if it helps, that helps.
Thank you. Okay. And Dave, should we deal with a motion? Do I close the public session to deal with a motion at this point, or?
Yeah, if there's no more public comment, and you don't need any further questions from the board, then you close the public hearing and go to board deliberations. You can open it up again if you need to, but go to board deliberations and go from there.
All right. Well, I therefore close the public portion of the meeting and bring it back to the board. See if there's any other questions they have, or a motion which we have provided for us on page 3 of Dave's memo. Christian, I think we're finished with the split screen. Thank you. Any discussion, or anyone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, I just have a technical question.
Sure.
And I don't know who this would go to, but on the plan set, the last page of our plan set is the yield plan, and the date on that is from February 5th. Does that date stay with the plan even when it's been updated? It does.
Yes, it does.
Nodding your head.
The date they're issued is always stays the same.
Okay.
But if you look up, there's usually a revision box, and you'll see here revised per TRC, and it says the date revised per PB decision, and then the last one's lot 5-6 edits prime wetland overlay added, and that was done on May 5th.
Okay, good to know. I didn't realize that.
Good question, Gwen.
Thank you. Well, I was looking at the plan set and I looked at the date on the bottom and I thought, is this the one that's been updated or is this the original one? I just didn't want to have that in the plan set if it wasn't it is the updated one. I realized that earlier, but all right. Thank you.
Okay. Again, Chair is willing to hear a motion regarding the yield plan motion? Which covers this particular portion of the discussion we've been having. Pete Cameron.
Yes, I hate to do this.
Yes.
But I've got so many pieces of paper floating around here, and I'm trying to figure out which applies to which.
Okay.
And Justin, this may be directed to you. I guess one lawyer to another. You sent in a letter of May 20 of this year to Dave. And I think it was on on the yield plan issue. Is that correct?
Hi, Mr. Cameron. It's partially correct. The 20 May correspondence did two things. It addressed the prime wetland issue. That's the number one there. And then it goes on to address the second issue we highlighted at the top tonight about the abutters request for a boundary appeal, a third-party review of the wetland delineation. So it did both. Okay, then help me to go to the second page of that letter. And at the top right hand, it's actually the third page. No, excuse me, it's this, wait a minute, now I'm confused, I've got the wrong letter. I beg your pardon. It's actually the May 5 letter. I'm sorry, this is I've got too many pieces here. It's actually your May 5 letter of 2021. Correct. And on the second page of that letter, up in the left hand, at the left-hand margin at the top, there's a reference to April 20 of 2021. Now that really threw me for a loop because I couldn't figure that out.
Is that merely a typo, or is this page from another letter?
Oh no, that's a typographical error. It's addressed correctly on the first page as 5 May. The 20 April reference in the top of the left hand, in the top margin of page 2, is a relic from a previous letter. It's my mistake. So I apologize.
No, I'm not, I just wanted to be sure that in fact did apply. It seemed to read, but then I looked at the date and I thought, well, okay, now you've solved that problem. Thank you.
Sorry for the confusion, Mr. Cameron.
That's all right. I get confused easily.
Don't admit it.
Don't do that.
Well, I thought maybe you were going to make a motion, but you didn't. So
no, I didn't.
Okay. John, are you waiting there? Yes.
Sorry, Lang, to interrupt. I didn't mean to do that. I'd like to hear some discourse from our board regarding this new information on the change in the yield plan.
Yes.
I'm not going to call people out, but maybe you could.
Well, I thought try to give lots of time for people to comment, but no news is good news, so you just keep moving along. But certainly, if the board has some concerns, I mean, Pete Steckler got some clarification, which was good. I think it's an error that has come up in the process and has been corrected. And we're basically, I think, in the process of accepting that correction, which modifies our yield plan approval, or as an addendum to it. So I'm not sure, Dave, exactly what it is. Just something in the minutes of the meeting, or is it a modify? Well, it's going to be, as you pointed out, the last page of the plan is dated, saying it's been modified, but.
Yeah, you review and accept it as a yield.
So we're accepting the modified plan, basically. Then.
Well, if depending on the motion, but you're acting upon acceptance of the yield plan, or that's what is being requested.
Yes.
But does this imply that there are more than one yield plan here?
No, this implies this is the one that you are accepting to move ahead to an open space development. You did review and accept a prior plan, but then a correction was made, and the applicant realized a mistake, revised the plan to correct that mistake, and resubmitted it. So the planning board now has to review and accept that, or act upon that plan, and that will create only one yield plan, this one. Aaron Brown has his hand up.
Okay, Aaron, please.
Sorry, Lang, I didn't want to interrupt before. Can I ask Christian Smith to put his screen back up again?
Sure.
Which shows the change in the plan, which we've already, I believe, vetted and voted on the prior plan.
Yes.
And should be discussing the modification, correct?
So I'm sorry, Aaron, which plan do you want to see? The approved one?
The one you had up earlier. The one you had up earlier, Christian. The current yield plan that basically shows
the current proposal.
The change. Yeah, the change from what we already voted on and what you brought before us potentially for a vote this evening.
There you go.
That one right there. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So to me, I'll make some comments. I'm not hearing much from the rest of the members. But I see clearly that the building envelope was reduced, which is also addressed in the letter from Mr. Grissett. He goes through that a bit as well, and in the application the changes they acknowledge and go into that. And yet the typical yield plan box still fits with the sideline setback and such, and the wetland setback. So if we as a board, this is my opinion, if we as a board accept Jim Gove's work as a environmental engineer, wetland surveyor, then this plan still appears to me to meet our regulation. So I would like to hear other people's opinion on that. I don't see something changing because it doesn't eliminate or add another building envelope.
No. Comments about that, board members? I mean, that's
Aaron, I think we all agree.
The silent majority, John, is that what it is?
I think that's what wrestling. That's what Chairman's wrestling with tonight. Silent majority.
Well, Aaron,
Nancy Belanger has her hand up.
Okay, Nancy.
Yeah, Aaron, I guess I'm just a little confused on what you're looking for. So because we're silent, it concerns you? Or, I mean, to me, it seems straightforward. We're just really fixing something an error that was found that corrected it. It didn't really change anything. It was just recognizing an error was found.
Oh,
so I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
That's that feedback, Nancy, is what I'm trying to draw out of you.
Yes.
Because I think we are a board and we're trying. I have found as a member on this board that we make our best work comes when we have a dialogue and reach a consensus. I've had my mind changed many times at this board by good discussions that was not maybe the way I saw something originally. Just want to make sure I'm not seeing more here than, I agree. It seems pretty simple, but I just want to make sure I'm missing something.
All right, great. Thank you.
Well, John, have you got any?
It seems basic enough, unless Aaron, you're doubting the lines are all in the right place. You're looking for some confirmation. I mean, if what I heard, to repeat what Nancy just said, I don't think it changes anything.
Yep.
Assuming all the lines are now in the right place.
Yeah. Molly, have you got any comments?
I mean, I don't know that I have anything other than I think that we should be a board that accepts that somebody can come to and say, hey, I made a mistake. Here is what I'm going to do to fix it. I think that that's a good culture to cultivate.
Good point.
Pete Steckler has his hand up.
Who's that?
Pete Steckler has his hand up.
Oh, Pete. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say I've been silent because as an alternate, I'm not supposed to participate in deliberations, so I'm going to respect that. But just wanted to make clear why I'm not chiming in on anything here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, Pete can talk. Pete can contribute. No,
of course he can.
Yeah, Dave, you're shaking your head. He just can't vote.
During the public hearing portion of the meeting, anyone can speak and the board can ask questions and the alternates can ask questions. But when the public hearing is closed and you go to deliberations, our town attorney recommends that only the acting board members speak during deliberations. If you want to open it back up, the hearing, for a limited purpose, you're free to do that. But when you're in deliberations, it should remain, based on council's recommendation, it should remain among the acting board members on that particular application.
Okay.
David, is that what our rules of procedure provide?
I don't think it's in there, actually.
Well, I'm troubled a little bit because I thought at the time we revised our rules of procedure, we had a detailed discussion with respect to whether, how and when alternates could participate in deliberations.
I think you're right.
They can't vote, but I'm still not totally convinced that they're precluded from participating in deliberations. And we need to go back. I don't have our rules of practice or rules of procedure before me.
I do. I don't believe it discusses alternate members in specifically under board deliberations. I mean, board deliberations says this is the board's primary opportunity to develop issues and discuss the case in preparation of deciding the board's action. At the chairman's discretion with the approval of the board, he or she may allow any means appropriate for the board to make its decision. A member, once recognized by the chairman, may request anyone to address a specific issue. And it talks about, if appropriate, the chairman may reopen the public hearing. It's silent on whether alternate members. That's what our legal counsel has advised this board in the past. Yeah. And I am just passing that along. Take it as you will.
I can comment on that. Pete, I do think we discussed that at length previously. And I know the couple of years that I served on the board as an alternate, I actually was not allowed to speak during the deliberation. It was Chairman Knowles at the time. And when Kelly became chair, I think that we were more liberal allowing alternates to speak during deliberation. And I would guess that we've probably been inconsistent during Lang's tenure as chair. So with that being said, I truly value everyone's input, and someone who's sitting on this board and someone who had been through it as an alternate for a couple of years without speaking, I think it's fairly frustrating. So I would like to ask for Pete Steckler to give his opinion on this, if that's allowable, Chair Plummer.
I concur in that.
Just reopen the hearing for the limited purpose of allowing Mr. Steckler to offer his opinion.
Or any alternate, including Pete.
Or any alternate. Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to reopen the public meeting for any alternate to speak on this topic. So, Pete, I'll give you the floor.
I better have something to say now.
Quick, get your script.
No, I mean, I think it's thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the rest of the board for allowing me to speak. I commend the applicant for clearly going out of their way to correct an error that, I believe wasn't intentional on their part. And, I deal with maps myself in my professional career, so I get it. And I think they've gone clearly above and beyond the call of duty to bring this issue to us, do a lot of research on it, which I greatly appreciate. And, it looks like using a 25 by 25 foot structure, it fits into the building envelope. That said, I didn't vote to approve the yield plan, and I still question whether, this is a feasible, this lot in particular now is like a feasible and viable building lot. And I guess if you'd say that about this one, you'd have to consider the lengths or the cost of putting in a driveway all this way, but I know that the board already voted to approve these lots and these building envelopes out here. But I'm not sure I would have voted in the same way at that point. All that said, the issue that's before us tonight around this prime wetlands buffer discrepancy, I think the applicants made clear what's going on, and the actual wetland line would push that buffer away from the building envelope, and I appreciate them honoring the original wetland line because that's what's on the books, and my understanding is we can't change those wetland lines just willy-nilly. There needs to be a process, or the prime wetland lines, willy-nilly. There needs to be an official process that we go through to change those boundaries and therefore the buffers. So hopefully that helps. And again, thanks for the time.
Thank you. Any other alternate wish to speak? Well, then I'll close it again and bring it back to the board for deliberation. And a call on Gwen English. How does she feel about the situation, please?
I am 100% in agreement with Pete Steckler. The only thing that would change for me is that I don't work with maps all day, and Pete does. But I think the comments that he made they certainly mirror the feelings that I've had. I've never been comfortable with these two lots, but that's now behind us, and we're simply looking now. And my feeling is we're looking at the kind of the revised plan, and it seems that they've done what they have to do. It's a very small building envelope, which I don't love, but it passes the test. So I don't have any more to add than that.
Thank you. Pete Cameron. Are you less confused now?
I'm never less confused.
Okay.
But I guess my concern, let me pose a hypothetical.
Okay.
If in fact the building envelope here had been, I'll call it adversely impacted.
Okay.
That would have caused the original yield plan that approval to be null and void. I'm not quite sure that I truly understand what it is we're going to approve a new yield plan. Is it, and the old yield plan then is history? Is that correct?
Yes.
So that all of what's led up to today or led up to the current situation that's all past. We're not going to reconsider any aspect of that, even though we individually might have had some concerns. All those concerns are in essence in the old plan or the originally approved plan.
That's correct. We're dealing with the developer coming back and saying, we made a mistake on the plan here, we've corrected it, and we wish to have a correct plan be part of the yield plan.
Oh, I think I know what you're saying, Pete. I mean, I think it's up to the board to determine what the extent of the review of this yield plan is. I think what Aaron might have said earlier, in theory, that you've already vetted, all the other aspects of this plan, so you should just focus on the revision of the 5 and 6 building lots. But you are being asked to, adopt this yield plan. So I guess technically you could, look at anything. But I think what Aaron underscored, you've already reviewed and accepted the majority of this plan as it is shown, with the exception of the changes that were described tonight. Does that answer your question, Pete?
Yeah, so all of the warts, if I can say, with respect to the original yield plan, those are going away. We're not refocusing on them. We're only focusing on lots 5 and 6. Is that correct?
Well, that's up to the planning board.
Well, but hold it. It does seem to me that we're not I don't like to use the word reopening because that has some technical or legal concept, but we can't go back and redo everything that's gone to the past. The only things we're looking at are 5 and 6 now. Is that correct?
No, Pete. We can do what we think is necessary. So if in the course of having this put back, they withdrew the prior yield plan, essentially, by presenting this to us.
Yes, there you go.
So right now, we are in a stage of we either accept this yield plan and vote on it or not. So everything can be opened up again, which is what Dave is saying. It's up to how we want to proceed. I mean, generally, as we work through the process of an application, we don't work through certain issues and then say, bring it back again, a year later or something. Generally, it is a walk down the road, and you don't always go back. But when something technical like this happens, we certainly have the right to bring anything back on the table.
That was my point, Pete, that you have the right to. And I'll give you an easy example. Say you're looking at this yield plan and you notice lot 2 had 149 feet of frontage on it, where 150 feet is required by our zoning ordinance. You would have the right and the obligation to say, hey, I didn't notice this before. This needs to be 150 feet. So the applicant can't say, oh, no, you can't look at that now. That's not the case. So just to illustrate it. I mean, not that there is anything like that I've noticed or anyone else has that I'm aware of, but what my point is, if you notice something, you do have the right to go back.
Exactly. If you think there was a mistake that we made, or that you made, or you changed your opinion, frankly, you have the right to do that. So,
if there's a mistake of fact, that's one thing. But I personally don't happen to be convinced that we can change our opinion at this point, because we've already gone and done 95% of this. I'm not opposing to do what we're trying to do. I'm just saying that at some point in time, I'll use the word precedent. In other words, if you made a decision on 95% of something, you don't throw all that earlier 95% out and start all over again. Or is that what you're suggesting, Aaron? We could do.
I think you have the right to bring any issue that concerns you on this yield plan forward. The only changes that I've observed, we've discussed already, and the applicant brought forward to us. So, but if there's something else that you want to bring forward, you have the right to do it. It doesn't mean if there's something else worth discussing or that you feel like is a material fact, you certainly would be obligated to bring it forward. So stuff can happen like Dave described. We could have a situation where you observe something different, or new fact came to light that you weren't aware of before. Just like the applicant had an error on their prior yield plan, you may have made an error in your judgment for some reason. We have the right to bring it back up because the other one has been withdrawn because of the mistake that was made. So, I mean, I do think that, it does shrink the 25 by 25 box's ability to fit, but they do still fit. And that's, to me, they still fit. So, if they were over the line a little bit and they would require a waiver or something, then it's a much different discussion. But because they still fit, from my opinion, it's a technical setback issue, but does not eliminate or add a lot.
And just so you're aware, Mr. Chairman, I know you had closed the public hearing, but there is an attendee with their hand up.
Well, thank you, Dave. So, Pete, are you pretty well set?
If you're talking to me,
yes.
No, I've said what I've said.
Okay. All right. Well, let me open the public hearing for this other individual who'd like to speak again.
John Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go back to something I think Mr. Gruder said, and I'll paraphrase the first part. I think it was the error appears to be insignificant, but I think I have this right, and I think he couched it by saying, assuming the lines are in the correct location, right? That's really the question at hand. If the lines are off any distance at all on lots 5 and 6, they're unbuildable. And again, I think the prudent thing to do is to have a third party review and not the applicant determine where the line should be. Thank you.
Okay. I will close the public session again and get back to where we were. Any other board members want to speak? I think we've all had something to say, so any other, and I think we've gone very thoroughly on discussing this. So I think we should ask Christian again to unsplit the screen, please. Thank you. And I think we have an understanding where we're at. So let me again ask for a motion so we move along. I think that we've had a good discussion, and I don't see any strong objection anywhere.
Mr. Chair, I can make a motion.
Okay, Jen, thank you.
You ready for that? Mr. Chair, I move that the request of Brian Grissett, PV case number 20-2 for a yield plan approval of a 17-unit single-family open space development be accepted.
I'll second it.
17, the right number, Dave? Because you said at the beginning just checking.
Yeah, let me check on that. Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah, 16.
The yield plan in front of us has 17 units.
Yeah, that's correct.
So that doesn't count Brian Grisette's house.
I think that's...
No, Brian Grisette's is number 2.
Okay.
Thought it was 16 condominiums, 1 single family, and then Brian's.
That's what I thought too. Can...
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's Justin Passe. The number 18 comes from the application of the bonus that we anticipate advancing under the town's regulation. So it's 16 condominium units, 1 subdivided, and then the existing Grisette parcel, which will be 18 total, but there's 17 lots depicted on the yield plan.
So I would make a motion for the 17, and then when they get to the open space development plan, that's where the density bonuses are provided.
Okay. Just checking. Thank you, Jen. Is there a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you, John. Any further discussion? Then I'll call for the vote. I don't know, let's start with Molly, please.
Yes.
And Gwen?
I am still struggling with the viability and the feasibility of the road going in to those lots off Cullen Way. And I don't know if I voted yes or no, but I'm going to vote no because I'm still troubled by those.
Okay. Jen.
Yes.
John Gruder.
Yes.
Aaron Brown.
Yes.
Pete Cameron.
On principle, no.
Aye. 2 noes. I vote yes. So that's 5-2. Motion carries. Okay, now we're back to an open meeting, public meeting, I believe, and let me get back to Attorney Passay. I think he had the plan laid out to now move to the question about the third-party wetland review.
Yes, sir. We're happy to take that up quickly and then hopefully get into the presentation on the site plan application that was filed. But to address the request for the review of the wetland delineation, our 20 May letter, which Mr. Cameron just referenced earlier, is what advances our position on that issue. And just to provide some context, before the planned April planning board meeting, which was going to be 22 April, we learned that certain abutters had filed a request for a third-party review of the wetland delineation. We didn't know the content of that request, just the fact that it was made. So as a result, in our letter that asked to continue the 22 April planning board meeting by virtue of that issue and the prime wetland issue that had come up, we indicated an agreement to a third-party review with the understanding that the prime wetland boundary is not subject to modification pursuant to this process under the town's regulations. And that offer was really made to expedite the process. As I know the planning board appreciates, and as you know, we're aware of, the planning board first reviewed this conceptual plan in this case in September of 2019, and it's been actively reviewing this case since April of last year. So we were in a position where we wanted to expedite the process and get things going. After we filed that letter, though, we were able to review the 3 identical written requests for a third-party review that were submitted and have determined that in our perspective, there is no legitimate basis for that request. Under the town zoning ordinances, I know that the planning board is aware, in the event that the building inspector or the planning board or the conservation commission questions the validity of the boundaries of a wetland area on a specific parcel of land, or upon written petition of the owner or any abutter of that property to the planning board, the board has the discretion, it has the authority, but not the obligation to call upon the services of a wetland scientist qualified to delineate wetlands and have that peer review, so to speak, performed. I think we have to look at the written request and the basis for that. And there were 2 bases that were advanced in those requests. The first was that the butters referenced the prime wetland boundary issue that was first raised at the Conservation Commission on April 13th, and that we've spent, the first half of this meeting discussing. That issue was then referenced after the Conservation Commission meeting in Mr. Sharple's memo to the planning board. And our position on that is that that's not a basis for a wetland delineation review, because as we've discussed and as we laid out in our filings with the board, prime wetland buffers can only be amended and modified pursuant to a procedure that's outlined in the state statutes. And there's, because, as Mr. Grisette stated, the prime wetland overlay is essentially a zoning overlay district. So it is changed, it is altered the same way that the zoning ordinance is altered via notice, public hearing, and then a vote by the town meeting. So that is not a legitimate basis for a request for the boundary delineation. The second reason that was advanced in these written requests was that there was an alleged conflict of interest regarding Gove Environmental Services and the Gove Real Estate Group. Again, from our perspective, this is not a legitimate basis for a wetland boundary appeal, and there's no familial relationship between Jim Gove and Scott Gove. So there's no conflict of interest there. So the result is that from our perspective, again, there's no genuine concern about the wetland delineation. I think it's important to note what these requests don't do. They don't raise questions of the validity of the delineations that have taken place in this case. Mr. Gove has been on all these phone calls at the last Conservation Commission meeting, we opened it up to have any of the abutters or anyone else raise any specific questions about the delineation that was performed. These plans have been scrutinized. There have been 2 site walks in this case. And so ultimately, I guess our position is that in light of the fact that there really has never been any legitimate question about any of the delineations, there's no basis to order one here. And really, that will just stand to detriment the applicant and delay things. And so because the board has discretion to order this, but not the obligation, we would ask the board to consider the bases for this request. And I think, we just went over the prime wetland issue, but that is a totally distinct issue that has nothing to do with the on-site HIS map delineation that was performed by Jim. And Jim is here. He can answer any questions about the process that he undertook. And at this point, there's just no evidence to question his stamp on the plans vis-a-vis the wetland delineation. And we appreciate the time and the ability to address the issue with the board.
Okay, thank you. Any board members have thoughts about that? Oh, John, were you putting your hand up, or you're just trying to keep your pen moving?
Clicking my pen.
Okay. Is there a need for a third party to look at the designations here? No, wetland review. Are we satisfied with what has been presented?
Mr. Chair, I guess I'll just chime in and say I was on the site walk, and when we walked down towards the wet meadow, we started getting squishy feet right when we hit Mr. Gove's line, and so I have no reason to question his wetland delineation for what it's worth. That would impact the current proposed development.
Thanks. Thank you, Pete.
Mr. Chair, once again, I agree with Pete on that.
Thank you, Gwen. I cannot see much, but I do see Pete Cameron's hand in the shadows. Yes.
Yes, that's where
you got a light. Have you got a light there, or did you pay the light bill?
No, they haven't paid their bill.
Okay.
Exactly what is it that this third party would do that has not already been done? Can somebody help me with that?
Double check.
I think it's to confirm that the work that was done by the Gove Environmental is, in another profession's opinion, correctly, I'll say adequately and done with proper scientific methods typical to those folks that do that kind of work. Kind of a confirmation of the work done. I mean, in the past, that's what really has been.
So it's a confirmation, not a de novo. It's not de novo. It's not brand new.
No.
But it's a confirmation of what Jim has already done. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if I'm not mistaken, when that takes place, and Dave, correct me wrong, you're there, as is the second opinion person or scientist, as is the person that did the original work, in this case, Jim Gove, or his, employees Correct. Thereof.
Yes.
So I know we had a case a while ago where there's a question of a wetland that was designated before this project that particular project at that time had come on the table, and it was submitted, and there was question about it. We just wanted, the board wanted confirmation that that was in fact not a wetland now. Maybe it was, 10, 12 years ago when that work had been done, but it was not the wetland, so we had that to be confirmed. So it's a, to me, I think a confirmation type of activity. You're not inspecting my work, but you're confirming what I did, if it was myself, that my performance was appropriate and that where I drew a line in this case is correct based on the science of the soil. Justin, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. I appreciate the process that the board has undertaken to question this, but I would just orient the board towards the language of the regulation, which discusses when there are issues of questions regarding the validity of the boundaries. I'm sure that the people who filed this request are on the line tonight, and I think the onus is on them to establish that there are questions regarding the validity of the lines in the boundaries as depicted on the plans. And I would just note that this exact opportunity was provided to these abutters at the Conservation Commission, and there were no legitimate or substantive or even any remarks about any questions regarding the validity of the delineation. So I just think that we should be focused on whether or not there are questions regarding the validity of the delineation, and we just haven't heard any. So I would just point that out.
Thank you.
Mr. Blaken, Neil Blaken has his hand up.
Okay, Mr. Blaken.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Hey, thank you for the time to speak. I'll be brief. This is uncomplicated. We spent over a year and a half on the matter. We assumed that the maps would be accurate. They are not. We have been very clear that we think that the number of homes being placed on this does not fit the land. We do not have confidence in the maps, and we were right. We would simply ask that you get it right. We don't understand the rush. It is up to the planning board, not the developer's attorney, to decide whether or not to order the review. And we're just asking them to get it, asking you, sir, and your colleagues to take a look at this, spend a little time and a little bit of the developer's money, not the taxpayer's money, just to get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Jen, do you have a sense of this? I'm just trying to get a kind of a sense of what the board's thinking here.
I would just say, like, in the past, when we've requested third-party reviews, there was a, specific thing that, we saw on the site walk or that we had a question about. In this case, I think that the one discrepancy that has been pointed out has been researched and investigated and rectified, and we just spent half an hour discussing. And I think everyone feels comfortable with that change, that particular change, and nothing else has been brought to our attention that seems different in the field than is what on paper. So because of that, I personally don't feel that there's a need for a third-party review. Someone brings something up otherwise.
Yeah. Thank you. Molly, have you any thoughts you want to share with us?
I'm torn because I want to be respectful of everybody in this process. And so I think that, and I also would question, and this is a question for Dave, I think, like, what has the typical process been up until this point? If a group of abutters come in, or anybody, at what point is this usually granted, or is it not usually granted? Like, where have we fallen in the past on other cases that are not involving this case?
Dave?
I'd have to probably maybe do a little research on exactly that, but I remember, let's see. third party review in general, like not just wetlands, like
Right.
I think there was one time there was a third party review for traffic requested, but then the traffic engineer came in and told the board and answered questions. And then the board decided not to, they had all the information and they didn't decide to move ahead with the third party review. A couple that I can remember, there was one out on Cypress Circle, but that was mentioned earlier because there was a prior plan. Somebody brought up, and a butter brought a prior plan that was in front of the planning board like 10 years earlier or something that showed a wetland in an area that the new plan didn't show a wetland. So there was two competing plans, both done by wetland scientists that showed, so we got a third party in review in to verify, the old plan, and it actually verified the new plan that was correct. Then there was one on another subdivision, and I forget what the reasoning was behind that one. But there was some, I don't remember, but what I do remember is each time the board has looked at it on a case by case basis and made a decision based on the facts in front of them and not just, at a request. They have gone both ways in responding to a request. If you feel it's justified, you request it. If you feel it isn't, you have not.
Okay. Mr. Gruder.
I don't believe I've heard anything that would encourage me to vote for a third party review. If there's something specific the abutters have, then I guess they need to show us. Most of us took the walk a couple of weeks ago and looked at some of the stuff firsthand. Some of the abutters were there as well. And I think Pete Steckler said that, where they said they'd be wet, it was wet, and where it was dry. I haven't heard anything to sway me to vote in favor of that.
Thank you. Aaron, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think we've been, I'm trying to remember in my experience on the board, this board, where a review of the wetlands actually changed them. And I cannot come up with a case line where the third party review changed the wetlands delineation. Can you think of one?
I can't, no.
That's just been my experience. So with lack of a compelling reason other than just checking someone else's professional work, which is not part of our process, I don't see a real reason to have a third party review in this particular case. I think that I truly can't think of a time when it's changed the wetlands. And with this project particularly, because of the type of project that's in front of us, there's quite a bit of wetlands that are being preserved and protected in perpetuity, which I think is probably what gathered favor with the Conservation Commission from what I observed. So I think the type of development does probably trigger our want to review. I know with cases where there's, massive crossings over rivers and brooks and estuaries, it becomes different than what we're looking at here. It's, I think this is a pretty good use if you're going to develop this land, a good way to do it, which is encouraged by the master plan, which I'm pretty into. So it's my opinion, Mike.
Thank you.
When English has had her hand up, and also there's a hand up from Trevor Knott in the public.
Okay, Miss English. Ms. English.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make one comment following up Mr. Blyken's thoughts a few minutes ago. And I hope I can speak for the board when I say that there is there is no desire among any of us to rush through this project. I think we all take this job seriously, and I think we have every intention of looking at everything as carefully as we can and asking as many questions as we can to make sure that we make the right decision. So if there's any doubt in abutters' minds that we're hurrying, I hope that that isn't the case. It certainly isn't my intention to hurry through this for any reason whatsoever. So, and then the other thought that I had, and just looking at the plan, the only area where I think a wetland review would be, and I'm not saying I would support this, but I think the only place where it would be desirable would be on the south end of the development by houses 12 through 16. And that's in the wet meadow. And I don't think that there would be any change. And if there is a change, it would be minimal at best in that wetland delineation in that area. I think the rest of the site, any review of that, it wouldn't really affect the houses that are being proposed. So I respect their concerns about the wetland delineation and throughout the site, but I don't see where any changes would really impact the proposed houses that we see on the plan right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Did you say there was another person in the public, Dave?
Yeah, listed as Trevor Knott.
Okay.
Hi, this is Laura Knott. I'm on nope. There's the great picture. I'm on Trevor's phone here. I live at 15 Tamarind Lane. I guess I would respectfully submit that the compelling reason for requesting, or our request for, a third-party independent review of the wetlands is the fact that the applicant himself admitted that the wetlands were plotted wrong in the first place. So here we are now taking their word for it that they have now done everything right, when I don't personally have a wetlands degree, or I'm not a wetlands scientist. So I can't verify it. I don't have that capability. I'm not sure if any of the board members do. So to me, it would be a prudent thing to simply request a third-party review of Mr. Gove's work, not to question him and his abilities, but just to ensure that this was done right and that everything on this plan was mapped properly. I mean, as it's been said multiple times, we've been looking at this for 1.5 years, and now all of a sudden there's recognition that there's some improperly mapped wetlands. So to that point, I would respectfully request that a wetlands third-party review is conducted. I don't think it's any significant amount of time, and I don't think it would be a significant amount of money from the applicant, considering what he's already put into this project so far. In addition, Mr. Brown pointed out that, or Vice Chair Brown pointed out that the Conservation Commission didn't seem to want to request a third-party review of the wetlands. I think that's kind of a misleading statement, just because they did discuss it and there was mixed reviews at that time, at that meeting. And they felt that it wasn't relevant to the case that they were discussing at the time, the conditional use permits at that time. And they also entrusted the planning board to request that review should they feel it's necessary, and that any subsequent plan would come back to them. So in that way, they were not necessarily deflecting responsibility. It was not their responsibility at that time to request it. So here we are at the point where the planning board is being requested specifically by 3 abutters and a group of neighbors to request this independent review. And so this is the point where I think that makes sense to actually approve that. I guess I don't see why there's such hesitation on doing that. I mean, again, it's been 1.5 years. What's another month, honestly, at this point? But again, I'm not a developer. I'm not the one wanting to put shovels in the ground. So, but I do want to get it right. I really do. I think if there's any doubt, which the applicant himself has put in this plan now, then it makes sense to do a review. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gove.
So just to be clear, the plan changes had nothing to do with my work. Okay, there's nothing, the plan changes had nothing to do with my work. It had to do with a graphical change based upon the old prime wetland line. So that has nothing to do with my delineation work. Just wanted to let that be understood.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've had enough discussion, so I'm going to close the public portion of this discussion. I believe each of the board members have spoken, so I would ask for a motion.
There was one attendee that has his hand up that hasn't spoken.
Okay, well.
David Haddon, maybe you want to just let that be the last person?
Sure. We'll have David do that, please.
Yes, thank you very much for your time. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Good. Thank you. I think what everyone is saying is it would just, it seems to me, and again, this isn't what I do for a living, but to listen to someone who's hired by the developer, it seems to me that you have, the fox guarding the hen house. And I think what everyone's just asking for is just to take away this point and give some clarity, just bring in a third party. And respectfully, I think, that's all we're asking for. There's been confusion. You mentioned the Conservation Board. There was confusion in that meeting. I mean, anyone who was on that call, I was. We spent 20 minutes trying to decide, whether this was going to happen or not. So there just seems to be a lot of confusion. And for myself as an abutter, just to have this simple task done and to get some clarity, I would feel much better about that. Thank you for hearing my opinion.
Thank you, David. Okay, now I'll close the public portion. John, did you have a comment? No, okay. So I need a motion, or I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, a motion on what?
A motion on whether we feel we should ask for a third-party wetland evaluation.
I think if you want to, you just have a consensus of the board to request it. I don't believe any official vote is needed. If you do not want to request one, then just say that and move on, or ask for a motion to say we need one. You see what I'm saying? I don't think it's a vote you've never voted on third party. I don't think so, but maybe if you want it, you could vote for it. But if you don't want it, it's not a vote. Yeah.
John Gruder has a comment that's going to help us.
So when we do a third party review, do we have an idea of how much money we're going to ask the developer to spend to get that done?
Thousands. Oh, it's definitely thousands. No. It's maybe always not. It's definitely been thousands in the prior ones, but it all depends on, first you decide whether you want it, and then you specify where you want it. Because like on a prior one that had a 63-acre site with, 20 acres of wet, you didn't want them to go out and delineate the whole thing. You had a specific issue. So you sent them out on a specific portion of the parcel. So, but that, still several $1,000s, that one costs. So it depends on who's available. And so how we do it is I would call around to try to find availability, which I did initially when people, this started, just to try to line someone up. And there's not much availability out there. But once we find someone that's available and willing to do it, we ask them for an estimate based on the scope of work. They give it to us, and then we have the applicant fund it. So for this, I don't know what it would cost. But it would definitely, depending on the scope. They're routinely.
They need to probably then work within some kind of time frame that's reasonable. Can't go 6 months.
No, that's the issue. I work once I'm delegated with that task to get someone. I try to get someone on board as quickly as possible. And, that takes some doing to find those people sometimes, especially in this environment.
And, we need them to define, we have to come up with a scope too, right?
Well, yeah, you could say the scope could be, look at the entire parcel and every wetland boundary, or look at the wetlands over by the crossing, or something to that effect. If you have reason to believe you'd want third-party review, I would recommend that you define what the scope is.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we don't, then, if we don't do everything, then is there another issue next time we have a meeting on this?
That would be up to the board. Yeah, like I said, the scope could be the entire wetland delineation, but that would be up to the board.
Yeah.
All right. That's all.
Well,
Gwen has her hand up, or is it an old hand?
It is an old hand, but it's.
I'll take that personally.
Thanks, Dave. I think I'm leaving now. That hurt. Oh dear! Now I just hit my screen and everything is. Oh no! I'll be back. There I am. Following up on Aaron's comment earlier on, in that it's good to have a discussion among the board about things like this. And let's have a discussion about what we think we do or don't want to do. And I agree with John Gruder that I think if we decide to have a third-party review, my opinion would be that it would be very limited to the area very close to where the houses are being proposed. I just don't see, personally, I just don't see where wetland delineation would impact anything else on the site except for next to those houses. And I fully respect the neighbors. I just don't know. I don't know that we're going to find anything dramatically different from what is shown on the plan. It's a big open field, and
yeah,
I don't know that Jim's lines would be any different from another scientist's.
Yep.
And I don't know if the neighborhood had other ideas on where they would like to see the work being done. And all that said, if it is just that one area, that probably wouldn't cost very much to review. It's no longer than Wild Apple Drive, the area that I could visualize being checked.
Okay, that's good to hear.
I'm lowering my old hand.
Jen, do you have any? I mean, you said earlier, I think, and I don't want to take words out of your mouth, that you didn't really see a need here.
Yeah, I really have nothing to add aside from what I've already said.
Okay. All right. Pete Cameron.
Again, here we have a question, at least in my mind. Are we, and I probably wasn't paying attention to the answer that was given, but we're confirming what Jim Grow has done, or we're having a totally brand new analysis? And I think what was said before is we're going to confirm, or the third party review is going to confirm what he has delineated. Or is that correct?
The way, the way this works, Pete, is that Gove Environmental went out there, walked the site, did the tests, and hung wetland flags and tied on wetland flags. And then the surveyor comes along, picks those up, and that's what you get for a wetland delineation on the plans. So now that was done before any flags were out there. Now a new wetland science, a third party review comes in, and obviously they're just going to follow the flags for the sake of being efficient. They don't have to recreate and look for the wetlands. They will do the flags, but they'll walk the boundary and then look to see, and then do some testing on either side and so forth, and walk along to determine if they feel the boundary should be, different than the flags that are in the field. That's how it's the process. So does that answer your question? I mean, it's not.
Yes. Okay. You probably told me that twice.
Did you hear it?
The lights are on, by the way.
I noticed that. You look better in the light. So do you have a sense, Pete, as to whether I think what I hear is if we do make a request, we need to narrow down to or specify what it is we feel uncomfortable with or would like to have reviewed. If we don't feel that we have that need, then, and I sense that as chair from the conversation going on here.
Well, again, as John Gruder has suggested, the scope here is what is important.
Mm-hmm. Aaron?
That's fine. I was just going to suggest that I don't think we want to vote against having a third party review, because if something comes up during the continued process of this case, we would have already, for some weird reason, taken away that. So my suggestion would be, unless someone on the board feels like we want to come forward and discuss it and vote to have it because they feel they want to have a third party review, that we move forward with our conversation regarding the rest of the matters on this application. And if there's some reason we need to revisit a third party, we have the right to do it at any time.
Yeah. So anybody on the board feel motivated to, not motivated, but feel the need to do that, to have some type of specific wetland review. And I don't see any here, so I think we'll, at this point, I'll say we're not going to do it or not request one, to keep it open, as you said, Aaron, and move on. Now it's 9:00 and we have another case and plus a couple other things we may need to deal with. So I'm thinking maybe we need to have a motion to table till June 10th, I believe we talked about. I was hoping that, as I know Justin did, that we could have the presentation of the project, but that's going to take at least an hour, and we do have another case sitting here. So,
yeah, it's June 10th. There is nothing on that agenda, so that is free to to move this application to, and you won't have any conflict with anything.
Okay, it's 7 p.m. Someone ready to be able to make that motion, please?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I move that we table this meeting, this proposal until the meeting of June 10th.
At
This
7 p.m.
application, I should say, not this proposal.
Yeah. Grissette's application. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pete. All right. Quick hand vote. Roll call vote. Gwen?
Yes.
And Aaron?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
And Pete Cameron?
Yes.
Molly Cowan?
Yes.
Jen Martell?
Yes.
John Gruder?
I get 2 votes. I think I already voted yes.
Okay. Well, all right. Did I miss somebody? I vote yes. Did I miss anybody else? Don't think so. Okay. Motion carries. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
And we look forward to seeing you again and Christian on the next month.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Okay. Next on our agenda, we have application of Scott W. Carlisle III for review of a yield plan for proposed 12-lot single-family open space subdivision and associated site improvements on the property located at 19 Watson Road. Subject property is situated in the R1 low-density residential zoning district. Tax map parcel number 33-26 and it's planning board case number 20-21. Well, we moved fast from 2 to 21. Dave, do you have some things to say about this? Is it ready to be heard? And
the yield plan, yes, is ready to be heard.
Yes, okay.
And I'll just jump right in if you don't mind.
Yes, please do.
Thank you. The applicant did submit plans for an open space subdivision and wetlands conditional use permit for a proposed single-family open space development and associated site improvements on a 97.99 acre parcel located at 19 Watson Road. The subject parcel is situated in the R1 low-density residential zoning district. And if people are familiar, you go over the Route 101 interchange at exit 9. You sweep around the corner like you're heading toward the high school, and Watson Road is immediately on your right. And you take that right and you go down, and there's like a 90-degree curve around the corner, and there's some woods to your right along there. That is where this proposal is located. The applicant did submit an entire package with a yield plan and an open space subdivision. However, section 7.7.1 of the zoning ordinance states that the dwelling unit density shall be determined using a yield plan, which shall be provided by the applicant and reviewed and accepted by the planning board prior to proposing an open space development plan. The applicant did meet with the technical review committee via Zoom on April 29th, and a copy of the TRC comment letter was enclosed in your packet that is in regards to the yield plan, because in concert with the same way with the planning board, we reviewed the yield plan and provided the comments on those, because once the yield and the density is established, then an open space development plan can be submitted, and we know that's not going to change necessarily. I guess it could, but it most likely will not change, and so we don't have to have any redundant reviews. Staff will review and comment on the open space development plan after the yield plan review by the board, and also Underwood Engineers did review the plans as well, but only offered comments on the open space development. So to avoid confusion, I will send the UEI letter, when the board reviews the open space. As the sole focus of this meeting, I would recommend is on the yield plan. The applicant is also scheduled to appear before the Conservation Commission on June 8th, because they do need a conditional use permit. There are some waivers, but I don't provide any of that motions. We can deal with that later. in response to the yield plan comments, which were after my memo was written, you got that additional supplemental packet. They responded to, just a handful of yield plan comments. I mean, we are talking about a 12 lot yield plan on a almost 98 acre site. So, but we wanted to make sure, they did not maximize the yield on this property. That's what they wanted to do was a 12 unit, but we had to have a 12 unit yield plan that we, TRC felt met the regulations. And we had some questions about road grading and so forth. And they provided that information to us, and my comments have been addressed. And I'm available to answer any questions the board might have. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we need a motion to open the case?
So moved.
Second?
I will second. Oh, sorry.
Did you go ahead?
Go ahead, Jen.
All right. So quick vote. John Gruder.
Yes.
Jen Martell.
Yes.
Glenn English.
Yes.
Molly Cohen.
Yes.
Pete Cameron.
Yes.
Vice Chair Brown. And I say yes. So, who is speaking this evening then?
That would be me, Mr. Chairman. My name is Barry Geyer. I'm with Jones and Beach Engineers here for the applicant.
Barry.
Good evening. With us tonight is also Mr. Carlisle, the applicant, and Mr. Hilliard, his attorney. As Dave said, he stole all my thunder, but this is a 98 acre parcel in the R1 zone. The existing property is located in the east side of Watson Road and includes 1,760 feet of frontage on Watson Road. If I may, can I share the yield plan?
Please do. Chair? We love sharing our screen.
There we go. Hopefully everybody can see that. You can see we have Watson Road here on the left side of the sheet. 101 is located down to on the south side of the sheet, or the bottom sheet. The property is outlined as such. You can kind of see my cursor run around here. We do have a large wetland complex on the east side of the property. There's a high point through basically the center of the property running north to south, so the property does drain both east and west. And it does have some wetlands and some vernal pools running through it. The intent of the project, as Dave said, is to construct a 12-lot open space subdivision. The applicant and owner really loves this property, and so he wants to put a lot of it into open space in perpetuity, and that's why we're only asking for 12 lots on 98 acres. So to that end, we are requesting approval of the yield plan tonight, depicting a 12-lot single-family subdivision or single-family yield plan on 2,050 linear feet of roadway. The remaining land outside of the 12 lots is 64 acres. The yield roadway requires no wetland impacts. It has minor buffer impacts, temporary, of 3,200 square feet. All the lots depict 4K areas and suitable areas of soil and wells with radius contained within the lot. As Dave said, we have attended a TRC meeting and have incorporated the requested changes into our yield plan. And with that, I would answer any questions the board has.
Okay. Lynn?
Yeah, just a quick question. The driveway going into lot 3, it's different on different plan sets. This one.
You may not have the updated one.
Is this the one that we're meant to be looking at?
We did submit revised ones. I don't know if Dave provided those. I think he said he did.
Yeah, we received those in a separate mailing.
Yeah, we sent out a separate. We got them I apologize. When we got them at like 4:00 on Friday, so we had already sent out the packets, so we had to resend them. But they should be the one with what's the latest revision date, Mr. Geyer?
It is. Let me zoom up.
5/21, right?
That sounds correct.
So that driveway mirrors the one that was on the other plan, and I'm just curious why did that end up changing?
After we had our TRC meeting, we were looking at making sure that all the individual components of the project met the requirements. So we decided to show the 4K on the northeast side of the lot 3 and the house and the well on the south side, which would require the driveway to be shared lot with lot 2.
So that's because the front part of the lot is pretty much wetlands, are you saying?
Correct. There's wetland buffers all through the front of that lot.
Okay. All right. Yep. Other comments? Questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Jen, please.
The engineer. Mr. Geyer, I was wondering if you could walk us through how stormwater would be managed on the site.
Yeah, we would put in catch basins and pipes, and then we would direct them to. We have a proposed detention basin on the south side of the project, as well as one on the north side. So we anticipate that the roadway would split and go both ways and collect the stormwater in these detention basins and be treated, or infiltration basins, or gravel wetlands, or whatever the BMP ended up being.
Mm-hmm. Some fairly steep grades, I think, on the roadway. Could you just walk us through that?
Sure, and that was one of the comments at the TRC meeting, and if my computer will actually generate this, we actually provided plan and profiles for the roadways to show that we could make it work. And there are sections of it that are 8%, and which is the maximum, but it does work. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So you can see that our steepest is 7, little over 7 on the south side of the property, and on the north side of the property coming back out onto Watson Road, I think we had 8%. Yep. An 8% grade going down to Watson Road.
The lines, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Go ahead.
The lines next to the road in that upper right-hand image, is that fill? What? No, fill, that right there.
Yes, that would be fill.
That's fill. All right. Thank you.
Dave, what are the regulations regarding
8% maximum?
8% max. Okay.
Maximum grade allowed. Yeah. So their profiles do show that they are at or below. Some I think one's 7.9, one is 8. So they do. The profiles show that they meet the maximum 8% grade.
Yep. Any other questions? Pete, are you?
Pete Steckler has his hand up.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Pete Steckler, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm guessing that the prime wetland in this case is the wetland all the way to the large wetland on the east side of the property. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we're greater than 200 feet from from that wetland, from the prime wetland with our proposed development.
Okay. And then this is maybe a question more for Dave from the TRC comment. It gets very confusing, I feel like, between this case and the last case in the McFarland Ford case, where it says for yield plan comments number 3, was the prime wetland boundary field delineated? Does it meet the state definition of prime wetland that includes any contiguous wetland? I feel like we just spent a lot of time on that in the last case. And is there a reason why you asked that, Dave? Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense, because I know I asked it because I was unclear on who did the wetland delineations here.
Mr. Gove did.
Okay. I wanted to confirm that, are they field delineating prime wetlands, or are they going by the 2005, adopted prime wetland boundaries? Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure, because I want us to be consistent. Whichever way we go, that's the way we go. Unless just to clarify, that question was exactly to clarify. We don't run across a lot of prime wetlands. We seem to have hit a jackpot here. Right. But like 3 in a row. But before then, so I just wanted to be clear on how people approach these and determine the boundaries, and whether they're field delineated or from the 2005, adopted map.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Now, Pete Cameron, did you have a question or a comment?
No. I was happy.
Okay. Oh, good.
As strange as it may seem.
Oh, dear. Any thoughts, Jen?
Hey, Lang, I have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
And since you called on Jen, I just wanted a little more detail what Jen asked, that where things are draining. And I see something on lot 1, is that right?
Correct. We show 2 proposed detention basins or stormwater treatment areas, one on lot 1 and one on lot 10. The road breaks, at the top of around lot 6. So stormwater be collected in both of those areas, which are sufficiently sized to handle the stormwater. But this is, we did design the road and we graded the road out, but we checked the sizing of the detention basins to see if they were adequate to handle that stormwater, which they are, but we didn't go to the degree that we will for the actual open space subdivision when we went to the design.
In lot 1, the house is right on the banking almost.
Let me switch to a different drawing. Maybe it'll be a little clearer. Get a little closer. To show this whole project requires 200 scale, which kind of gets fuzzy, I know.
That's good.
So it would be at the top of the bank. This is a stormwater that's kind of dug in. But we still have area in the back and in the front where we could put a house.
Did you say you hadn't fully calculated?
No,
how much water you'd be collecting?
We sized the basins to make sure they were appropriate for the anticipated impervious that would come with this. We didn't go to the degree that we do with an open space, with the actual design for the open space.
Yeah, doesn't require it.
Correct. But we do want to, show you what could be constructed or would be constructed if this was an application in front of you for this standard subdivision.
If it doesn't require it, then is the yield plan any good? If we don't know if it's really, if we really don't know it's going to work.
I think what he was saying was the yield plan requirements don't require that you design it to the degree that you would for the open space subdivision.
Yeah.
Right, but then the point is, then maybe it won't yield 12 lots.
Well,
if we did the full calculation on it, maybe you couldn't build this.
This is 98 acres. We're asking for 12 lots where they're
right.
So we would find the room.
Okay.
There's 97 acres of it that aren't shown within the lots.
Say that again.
There are 97 acres, or sorry, 67 acres.
Okay, that's fine. That's what I heard. Right. The 97 out of 90.
I misspoke. I apologize.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Thank you.
Aaron, of the 97, there's 67 that you, yeah.
Right, not 97.
Aaron Brown has his hand up.
Aaron, please.
I think we should schedule a site walk. What do you guys think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think I heard that they're going in front of the Conservation Commission in June.
June 8th.
Okay. It would probably be fairly efficient if we can try to cross-pollinate that and do it prior to your Conservation Commission meeting. Is there a time that would work for you? I know it's coming right up.
We got a couple of days.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on what you would like to see. I mean, typically we'd stake out the center line of the proposed road, which you haven't seen yet. Right. But that we can still do that. Hopefully, as somebody said, it's pretty busy these days.
May I ask a question, Aaron? Do you want to do a site walk for the yield plan and open space development project, or just the, just for clarification?
Well, I haven't never walked the land, so for me, I have learned that I benefit significantly by walking the land, Dave. So whatever they can accomplish, getting marked in the field really does help us be more effective in our meetings. So I understand, and maybe we can't do it before the conservation meeting, but I was just trying to help them.
Absolutely. I was just I guess I didn't word it well. I was like, so we're reviewing a yield plan. Normally, I would have them mark out the center of a proposed road of the open space development plan where the building envelopes are going to be. Or are you looking at this reviewing the yield plan? You want to see where the yield plan road would go. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to. Yeah.
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. I think this is a underdevelopment of the parcel. So the open space is probably going to be more appropriate, but I don't know if they're that far in their process yet. So if we want to take it step by step, slow it down a little bit and do yield plan first, if Barry isn't so far down the line on the open space side, then maybe we have to just work with the yield plan initially. Where are you at, Barry, you think?
They have the whole open space plan. They submitted it. It's all designed.
Okay.
But according to our ordinance. But I just wanted, what did you want marked out in the field and so forth?
I would prefer to see, is it possible to get both done? The center lines? It's two roads. Those are probably the biggest thing is the roads to me.
I think we could do the open space road, the proposed road for the open space, which really parallels the design of the yield plan to a degree. We haven't set the time, but basically we have a week in order to do that. And I think we could get that done, but I doubt that, I would be moving stuff out of the way that's already scheduled to get it done, honestly.
All right. So you said you could do the actual open space?
Correct.
Okay. That is very helpful. Frankly, for me, just walking the land helps. So if whatever you can do makes it a more efficient process here and prevents us from having to go back. Sometimes we've had to go back.
Yep. It's a great walk.
Yeah. So we could probably try to do it later, towards your meeting on the 8th or the 7th, somewhere in there maybe.
Yeah, I'm fine. I can't do next Wednesday, the 2nd, but the 4th, which is a Friday, or the Monday, which is the 7th, before the meeting is fine with me. We will make it work whenever the board wants to make it work.
Oh, good. The 7th is great for me, but I can make the 4th work also. How's the rest of the board doing?
I think 7th looks good. I don't know about others. Time of day, 5 o'clock kind of thing. Just when the black flies.
I can't do 5, Len.
Okay.
I do better with the morning ones myself.
Okay.
But
a coffee chat.
And you probably get up at 5 a.m., right?
Has the Conservation Commission walked the site, and are they going to want to walk it as well?
I'm sure they will. They have not walked it yet, but not all of them, I should say. I believe a couple of them have.
It would be nice if, just for your convenience and just to get everybody, I don't know. I hate to throw that into the mix here, but it would.
The meeting of June 8th, Gwen, we're absolutely trying to invite them and schedule it so they can be there too.
Yeah.
So that's why we're trying to do it before that meeting.
Okay.
So they hopefully can walk it before they hear the case.
Okay.
So does the 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. on June 7th work for anybody?
Sure.
June 8th.
Friday the 4th. Yeah, Friday the 4th is better for me.
The 8th is better for me.
7th. We're talking about the 7th, not the 8th, right?
Yeah, well, you are, but some of us are talking different dates.
Well, did I hear? Okay, I heard the 8th.
I proposed the 7th.
Yeah.
John said the 8th and Molly said the 4th. I think it was Molly.
Okay. All right.
So we're all over the board.
All right. I thought it was 8 a.m. on the 7th, but okay, we're talking about 4th, 7th, and 8th. Awesome.
And
What time can you do on the 8th, John?
Any early as you want.
Okay, I can do the 8th early.
Like 8 o'clock?
Yeah, if ever.
8 really good.
I mean, it's not about you and I, though.
What? What are you kidding me? What board do you think you're on?
You're only the vice chair.
Aren't you the king, John?
No. King Lang.
All right.
Does that work for anybody else? Or are John and I going to be holding hands?
No, I could do the 8th. Did I hear one person say that wouldn't work for them? Gwen, was it you?
Oh, Gwen has to go.
No.
Okay.
So we're looking at the 8 o'clock on the 8th.
I can do the 8th.
Is what I hear.
It works.
Yep.
Oh, good.
Wait, Detour is going to be there?
I can't do Friday if you want to do Friday, Aaron.
Friday it is. All right, so June 8th, 8 a.m., does that work for the applicant?
Yes.
You just...
Okay, and Steve, will you let invite the Conservation Commission?
I will.
And the public is invited as well.
Yeah, it's a public meeting.
Do we have a proposed start time yet?
8
a.m.
8.
Thank you.
Yep.
That is World Oceans Day, and I'd rather be surfing, but I guess on the same.
Is there a good parking area for people to park, or?
There's a small parking area. We will meet. There's a gate across the trail, where that's where the road is going to enter, basically to where the current access is. There are a few parking spaces, but along that stretch of Watson Road, it's really easy to park on the side of the road.
Yeah.
I should say off of the side of the road.
Aaron, are you there?
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Could you just take over the meeting for a minute? I got Nature's Calling here, so I need to slip out for a second.
Too much information, but sure.
Okay.
He's going to fall asleep too. All right. So we have a site walk scheduled for June 8th at 8 a.m., inviting the Conservation Commission and inviting the public. Are there any other issues that somebody on the board wants to discuss this evening with the applicant? Does anybody have anything they specifically want the applicant to be prepared to discuss at the site walk, since that's the next time we'll see them?
Mr. Vice Chair, I actually do just have a quick question for the applicant. The functions and values for the wetlands, is that something, I saw that it was in process. Is that something that, like when do we expect to get that?
That has been submitted.
Oh.
Dave, just double checking that you received that.
Okay.
Say that again. The natural resource.
The functions and values.
Yeah, that is going to be. We didn't want to confuse because it's a yield plan. We don't require that for the yield plan. We require it as part of the open space development that will be submitted following the yield plan. So we will have that information to you, like the UEI. I just didn't want to confuse it too much and keep them, separate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm back.
I'm not going to comment.
Okay.
Dave, in order to move forward with the open space, we have to have the board accept the yield plan, correct?
Yes, that's what our ordinance states.
John Gruders, your hand's up. You got something to speak about or ask?
You thought I was going to ask it if I had to do that. No, I have nothing to ask. It was a hand up from last time I asked something.
Okay. Other thoughts? Jen, have you got any?
No, I'm looking forward to the site walk. I drive by this parcel several times a day, and I've always wanted to get out and walk around. So I'm excited to do that.
Yep. Okay.
Do you want a motion?
Sure.
Are we looking to continue this hearing to the 10th?
I would say yes.
I know we will. The only thing is Dave, do you think we'll have comments back from the Conservation Commission for if we meet on the 10th and they meet on the 8th?
Usually they do. I can't guarantee it. It's going to be up to them, but I mean, as long as they go on a site walk beforehand, they could they've done it in one meeting, but they may not. I can't guarantee it.
Okay.
But I think if you went back on the 10th in 2 weeks, you'd be going back to just the yield plan. And then maybe they'd submit for the open space development for the June 24th meeting. I can't.
Is my thing not working? That would make sense.
It works now.
Yeah. I think that would be okay.
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue planning board case number 20-21 to June 10th, 2021 at 7 p.m.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's vote on that one. John Gruder.
Yes.
Jen Martell. Jen?
Yes.
Thank you. Molly?
Yes.
Gwen English?
Yes.
Pete Cameron?
Yes.
Aaron Brown?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion carries. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much, and we shall see you on the 8th at 8 a.m.
All right. Put in your donut orders now, everybody. All right. Next, Dave, we talked about, where's Dave? There he is. We talked about talking about the gateway letter.
Yeah, you certainly can discuss it. I provided you with the letter. I also provided, after speaking with the chair and vice chair, I had reached out to legal counsel, and I did provide a legal opinion to all of you. And you could, if you want to discuss the legal advice, you could go into non-public, discuss that, and go from there.
All right.
Or you could discuss whether you want to, what you want to do with the request, in the public meeting.
Yes. Yep. Does the board have a sense that we'd like to go to a non-public session to discuss attorney's opinion?
I think we should go into non-public session.
Okay. Any others?
Yeah, I was going to agree with that just because it's sometimes difficult to separate the legal opinions we read from.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
Just to kind of keep it safe.
Okay. How does that motion go, Dave? According to state law, blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, you would vote to go into non-public session in accordance with NHRSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2(1)L, which states consideration of legal advice provided by legal counsel, either in writing or orally, to one or more members of the public body, even where legal counsel is not present.
Who would like to make that motion?
I will make it.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Jen.
The other Jen.
All right. Yeah, right. All right. Let's vote on that one. Aaron.
Yes.
Pete Cameron.
Yes.
Molly Cowan.
Yes.
Gwen English.
Yes.
Jen Martell.
Yes.
John Gruder.
Yes.
Lime Plummer. Yes. Motion carries. Now, what's our procedure, Dave?
I was under the understanding, I didn't know if you were going to have one. Usually I set up a separate Zoom meeting, but I'm on the understanding that Exeter TV can do this and log us out and have us still meet. Exeter TV, can you respond to that and allow us to be in non-public where it's not being videoed or recorded?
I'm sorry, what do you mean? I'm not sure if I've heard of that before. This is Hillary.
Yeah, the select board, I saw the select board meeting do it. I don't know who ran it, but if you're not familiar with it, then to the rest of the board, I'll do it right now, and I will send out the Zoom invite via email and just log on to that, okay? I'll do it while I'm, here and still on there.
Can we take a 2-minute break while we're transitioning? Awesome. Thank you.
Or you can have Aaron take your place for a minute. Oh, come on. No, not that one.
Hey, Lang.
Yes.
How many people are still on the screen?
I don't know because let's see. Let me go.
Well, there's still 14 there.
Are we supposed to log out and then get back on? Is he sending us another email or something?
No, I'm doing it right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm almost done. I was just inviting everyone. I just going to make sure I have everyone. I'll hit send.
We don't have to do anything.
No, you have to check your email, and you're going to get an email from me or a Google invite, and then you're going to click on that link, and I'll see you in that meeting. And when you get that email, log out of this one, log out of this Zoom meeting, go to that one, and then when that's done, we'll log back into this one.
Wow.
But I just wanted to stay on just to make sure I've gotten this, and I think Jen is the last one. And save. Yes.
There we go.
And it's a Zoom link, right, Dave? Not a Google link.
You gonna leave this one?
No, it should come through. No, it should come through as join on a PC, and it's a Zoom link. Yes. I just sent it. I just clicked it. Should send. So, anyone get it?
I heard it.
Yep, I got it.
Okay.
So we'll log out of this.
I don't have it.
Leave this one.
I didn't. Oh, I don't have it.
Okay, let me see.
Oh, Dave Sharples.
Come on.
That's weird.
Yeah, I sent it to you, Nancy. I think we've always had this issue.
We do, and I don't know why. Okay.
I'll cut and paste it and send it to you as just a compose an email and not as a Google invite. And
Thank you.
I'll do that now.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll see you on there.
Yes.
All right. I'm just trying to figure out how I get out of this one.
Leave meeting.
I just closed the meeting.
I got the screen shrunk and I can't get it big again.
You got to hover over your blue Zoom thing at the bottom, if you have one there.
Mute, and who do we got here?
I got no Zoom.
Auto settings. No, I don't want auto settings.
All right, friends, I'll see you there as soon as I get my link.
All right. Come on. There we go.
I have to leave this meeting, right?
Correct.
So Dave sending a link. Yeah.
Nope, can't do it.
Hey, Pete.
There we go. Thank you. Well, Pete, you did it in record time.
Yeah, hey, I'll learn eventually.
Just don't forget how you did it.
But again, we may not live long enough.
How'd you guys get on so quick?
All right. So let's have a little discussion about the request from Gateway at Exeter LLC in their letter of May 13th, 2021 from attorney Thomas Leonard. How do we feel about that? Is that something that, I mean, have things changed or?
I'll start.
Pete, Cameron?
David, do you think they would be opposed to going with the application route?
What do you mean?
Well, filing a new application. Because we can't tinker with the existing one. If we decided we wanted to go forward and think about the question, do you think that that the Gateway would go and file a new application?
I don't know.
Because to address your concern, Molly, this is I think this is the only way to yours and Nancy's concerns about affordable housing. This is the only way to do it in this context with a new application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Molly has her hand up and Nancy has her hand up.
Okay, Molly.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see an application that we can act on. So whatever that means in terms of a new application, something changes about this one so that it's different enough that we can take it up, whatever that looks like.
Okay.
And I was going to say the exact same thing that Molly said, so I don't need to repeat it.
Oh, thank you. John.
And I'm going to say that I don't think anything's going to change.
Oh.
You know, you said if it changes, I don't think that's what he's going to do. He's going to make a new application. It's going to be just what he told us what he wants to build and what he doesn't want to build. So will any of your votes be different?
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go to the question of what we tell David right now regarding the instant letter. Do we want him to go and in essence have the word get back to Gateway that we're not going to move forward on the basis of what they're now asking for?
No.
Did I misstate that?
No, I think that's right. We don't see anything that's changed.
Now, the question is, do we need a motion for that?
No, we can.
And I don't think we do.
No, I think we do that with consensus. So I certainly don't feel we need to meet with them on this. Don't think it's appropriate.
Well, is it the sense of the board that David will follow along and in essence get back to Gateway, that we're not going to proceed forward on the basis that they're now asking for? I think you should.
I think, yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah. Okay.
I would agree.
Yeah. Aaron?
Yeah, there's nothing new that's been presented to us. So it would be an appropriate line, like you said,
to
rehear the case or change a condition for whatever reason.
Yeah. Okay.
We've already voted.
Jen, did you have?
I agree with my fellow board members that hands are really tied to, we can't rehear this case. We can't reconsider conditions. If the applicant wants to revise and submit a new application, I'd look forward to seeing it.
Good, thank you. I would say that we have consensus and would ask Dave to contact our attorney to get back to Attorney Leonard. Can you do that for us, Dave?
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Couple other things now. Where's my agenda? Keep losing it.
But before we don't want to lose track of the affordable housing issues, Molly.
No.
Nancy. I feel very strongly as you do about it. As you know.
Yes, I do. Me too.
All right. Somewhere in my papers here is an agenda I was looking at. Oh, it could be right here, right on the bottom of the pile. We need to have election of officers at this meeting. It's that annual time of the year. And I also had asked, yes, we received in our packet just to let us all know the various committees that we're involved with that Barb put together. That's kind of for our information. And I believe those are all the committees that we work with. So,
may I ask a question?
Sure.
As an alternate, alternates do not vote on election of officers, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Alternates certainly can be on a committee. So
really?
Well, I think so.
I'm surprised. Okay. I am surprised by that.
Do you know, Dave, is it that allowable that an alternate can represent the board at a housing advisory committee, for instance?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to, I don't think so. I'd have to do a little research just to confirm, but I don't think I've ever had an issue with an alternate member being appointed to a committee.
Well, let me ask this scenario. So on the Housing Advisory Committee, we're very informal, right? And Pete's already on it. But because I am not a voting member on the planning board as an alternate, if I was put on another committee that they vote, then that would mean I couldn't vote, wouldn't it? If I was a planning board alternate,
I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I think I would say you're going to work under the rules of that committee.
That I could vote if I was okay.
You're a sitting member, and you should be able to vote.
That's an interesting dilemma. Okay, thank you.
Otherwise, I think it would be discriminatory, but I don't know. I'm not in the Civil Liberties Union. But at any rate, so just to let you know who's representing us where. Don't throw that piece of paper away. You may need it some night. So anyway, the officers we elect tonight are clerk, vice chair, and chair, I believe. We don't have a treasurer. Town takes care of that. So we're open to nominations for any or all three of those positions. I believe Pete is willing to serve if elected, but he feels that he doesn't want to stand in the way of progress. So if the board feels that esteemed position should be filled by somebody else, then that's perfectly okay. And I would say the same about my position. I'm perfectly willing to continue serving. If you think that I'm able, I'd be pleased to. But if you feel that you want other leadership, that's okay with me. So, someone would like to make a nomination or two, and I don't know about vice chair. I know he has opinions.
I do. I'm fine to continue on unless somebody else wants to take the chair.
Okay. Anybody want to step up to any of those positions? Or are you very happy with your leadership team?
So you two are happy staying where you are?
I am. I can't speak for Pete, but that's what he says.
Well, as I told Aaron and Lang, I would be willing to step down, but I also will continue on if that's the will of the people. I'm sorry, the will of the board.
Well, they're people too.
I'm happy to nominate the three of you to continue serving in the positions you're in now.
Okay, thank you.
I would second that nomination.
All right. Okay, roll call vote. John Gruder.
Yes.
Jen Martell.
Yes.
Gwen English.
Yes.
Molly Cowan.
Yes.
Pete Cameron.
I think I'm going to abstain because I don't think it's fair to vote for myself.
Okay.
But I'll vote for Lang and Aaron.
Okay. Aaron.
Yeah.
Brown. And I vote yes. Thank you for your confidence. We'll do our best.
Hey, Lang, can I ask you one thing? Can we discuss the alternate thing that we got into in the meeting earlier about the alternate's role? I'm trying to find it, Dave. Where is it in our regulations?
What
would be in our rules of
the
planning board composition and the alternate role or the members?
It would be in our rules of procedure.
It's in our rules of procedure. It's in your handbook. You go right to the tab, the red tab in the back.
Open the cover first.
Are you talking the 3-ring binder that you told me to throw away because it's so out of date?
Yeah. No.
You just got a new one.
You just got a new one like a couple months ago.
He hand delivered you one, and within a month, he gave us a new set of papers to fill it with.
But in addition to that, alternate members, they're also covered in our thing, but they're also covered in state law as well, under 673:6.
So the question is...
Yeah, what's your question? What do you specific want to talk about during?
All right, so it's...
We're
supposed to be... It says Exeter Planning Board Rules of Procedure adopted May 10th, 2018.
Correct.
Yes.
I guess I just wanted to. I guess I just wanted us to be consistent with how we operate, and in my time on the board, it hasn't been consistent, and I thought it was discussed a couple years ago, and we were trying to involve the alternates more in the discussions of our applications, I thought.
Well, okay, this is how I think it, this is kind of how we got to where we are.
Training.
I think at first there was, when you're an alternate, if you weren't a sitting member, a lot of boards, not just Exeter, I don't know what happened here, 10 years ago, but the alternates wouldn't even sit up at the table. They would sit down with the books or leave the meeting. They wouldn't be be able to participate. But
Right.
then the state law added a thing that as an alternate member of a local land use board, an alternate member of a local land use board may participate in meetings of the board as a non-voting member pursuant to rules adopted under 676(1). And it talks about rules of procedure and so forth. So it's not, that's the state law. It's not exactly clear what the role is when the legislature said that, but they said, alternates can speak even if they're not voting members. That's kind of what motivated that legislative change. A lot of planning boards then changed to allow the alternates to speak. And then they also started allowing them during deliberations after the public hearing was closed. And that kind of created a gray area that really isn't specifically addressed, in my opinion, in our rules of procedure or in the state statutes. So I sought a legal opinion on that. This was a long time ago with the same group that represents us in Exeter, but long before I got here. And their opinion was always the alternate members are encouraged to participate during the public hearing, but once the public hearing has been closed and its deliberations, it should be kept to the voting members. Whether that's, I don't know if there's any case law on that or anything. I don't remember that far back, but then I checked with Mitchell Group again a couple years ago, and I think we had that conversation at the board that's what they recommend.
Because I think the reasoning part was that an alternate member might influence how the board votes, even though they're not voting.
Yeah, well, I think that's what I understood too, but that's part of being on the board to me, is to be part of the board and to encourage people to be an alternate. They should be able to have their opinion have weight, even though ultimately it doesn't have the weight of a vote behind it. So right. I don't know. I mean,
can I chime in here? I'm reading text under the Exeter Planning Board Rules of Procedure adopted May 10th, 2018 that says alternates are considered members of the board when attending a meeting and shall participate in the hearing and deliberative portion of a public hearing. A roll call vote will be taken after deliberation, so it is clear which members are voting. So that to me says, let's deliberate.
Yes, that is contrary to what our legal opinion has told us.
Uh-huh.
I think we had this discussion. I think it was a couple of years ago we had this discussion.
Yeah, but that's how we were operating.
It seems very clear.
Yeah, and we changed this line. Didn't we change this?
Yeah, we had 3 of us worked on this.
Yeah, we did. This was a battle.
This was Pete and Kelly and I remember talking about this at length.
That is why go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we just felt it was critical that alternates were part of this deliberative process and were able to lend their thoughts and ask questions, but wouldn't be able to vote. Otherwise, everything was open to them. I don't remember having a discussion that was in line with what the legal counsel indicated we should be doing. So I guess do we change this, or is it important for us to follow counsel's advice, or?
I think that's what the board should decide. I mean, that's what our legal counsel represented. I think now I'm remembering correctly. I was a little, when I said that was why I asked that of legal counsel, because it is clear in our rules of procedure, but they came back and I relayed to the board about that, and you started following that, for a while. So definitely, I mean, I guess it's ultimately up to the board to decide. Advice is just that, it's advice.
Well, I agree with you. I thought this had been well discussed. This question of the ability of the alternates to enter into deliberations. They did no vote.
Right.
They basically had to step back at the time that the chair decided that he will call for a vote. They could not, I don't believe they could put in a motion. I don't believe an alternate can make a motion.
I think you're right.
But the alternate could deliberate on the motion, but not make the motion. Now, that's just my memory of...
Or vote on the motion.
No.
Because they don't vote, that's clear.
You cannot vote. But can I ask you, Pete, was this in consultation with our legal counsel?
No, okay. I do not believe so.
Right.
I believe that Gwen, you and I'm trying to
think. Kelly worked on it with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if I don't know if it needed to go to legal counsel to be reviewed. I know we voted on it, but I don't know that it ever went to legal counsel.
I don't believe it did.
I don't think it did either.
It must not have, because I've heard their opinion several times. So and, it hasn't changed over the years, and that is contrary to what our legal advice is.
So, Dave, I think it's been the past consensus of this board, of which several members, including myself, are still part of the board, when this was made clear, to invite and include the alternates beyond what our legal counsel is telling us. And you're suggesting that the way to do that is what we did tonight.
Yeah.
Procedurally
limiting an opening of the public hearing to just our alternates. That's the mechanism.
Well, I think I think you have the right to do that. You have the right to close and open the public hearing, and you have the right to, I don't believe it's ever been challenged, and I've seen it done, hundreds of times, is where you open up the public hearing for a limited purpose. So if you wanted to do that, you could do that. It's almost essentially semantics, it seems. Like, if you were to do that, it's like, why can't you just allow them, But I suggested that because I thought it was technically a way to do it, that is consistent.
That makes sense to me. I mean, because it never made sense to me that an alternate wouldn't speak at all. Because if you weren't even on the planning board as an alternate, you could sit out in the audience and speak. So that's obvious, right? But when it comes to deliberation, I would like to encourage our alternates to participate. And if that mechanism is the way to do it, to limit our exposure, I guess, then maybe that's the way we proceed.
Potentially. I mean, I think I'd have to double check with them. I mean, I'm not speaking for them, but what I understand was the public hearing is a process where outside, input is given. And then when it comes to deliberations, it's those who make the decision are the ones talking. And when they open it back up to someone else, like an alternate member or the public, then do they just open it up and then they don't give the opportunity to someone else who might not agree with that, say someone in the audience or the applicant's attorney or something? They give them an opportunity to respond, and then they could raise some due process issues. I'm not saying that would be successful, but I think that's the vein they're coming from. It's like, once you close it, it's just to the people who vote. You have enough information. You don't need to hear any information outside of the people that are making the decision. I think that's where they're coming from on that. Whether it's, it's advice, like I said, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So could I weigh in as an alternate right now?
In this discussion, absolutely. You're not in this application.
I kind of have to, but so Aaron, just from my perspective, very rarely have I had a question that came up while the planning board was deliberating. Almost 99.5% of the time, and I can only speak for myself, someone on the planning board, a voting member of the planning board, has asked the question. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I do. I understand. I know though, I mean, I think I spent a couple of years as an alternate, and I can remember that when it went down to the deliberation, sometimes things would be cued by your other members that trigger something in your thought that you might be able to spur on that conversation. That's what
and
this
it,
is.
Yep, and it has, because I'll write questions while I'm listening. And that's when I raised my hand and asked if I could ask a question. In the past, that's what I've done.
Yeah.
I just think it's, I don't know. I mean, we hate to put ourselves with using an improper legal procedure, right? That's clearly not how we should move forward as a board. But if there's a way to encourage the input from all of our members, I think that should be a goal. And I think it always has been a goal of this board. So I think that's important because I don't know, to me, it's valuable.
I agree. And I think that whatever we decide tonight should be updated in our rules and procedures, because
that should be clear. Yeah.
We have this conversation every 3 years when we forget what the decision is, and then we go back and look at the rules and say, oh, that's not, so I mean, maybe it would be good to like, Dave, could you check with legal counsel and have them review these and make sure that they're okay, and if they have suggestions for changing it, like kind of.
Well, may I offer this?
Sure.
I'll go ahead and tinker with the language, and then we can. I will not wordsmith, but I'll tinker with the language such that it will give the alternate the right to participate in the deliberations. Then at that
it already
point,
does. It already. That's what the language already says.
That's what I said. That's what I think it does.
It does.
It does.
And therefore, what I guess what we're struggling with is, are our rules of practice and procedure in violation of state statute? And I don't think they are.
That's exactly right, Pete. That's what we're trying to figure out.
Well,
if we are in conflict.
I will say that, go ahead.
It might not be that, the specific question. It could be others, due process and so forth. It might not be in specific violation of RSAs. But I hear what you're saying. I think the next step, like, I understand what the board wants to do. The board wants to allow the alternates every opportunity from start to finish to speak. So what I will do is I'll revisit it with our legal counsel. I'm pretty sure I know what they're going to say, but I'll tell them what the board wants to go to and how do they go about that.
Yeah, if they say, hey, they shouldn't do it, your next question is, well, they want to. How would you suggest they do it?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. That's what I'm gonna. And then again, it's advice. It's the planning board can ultimately decide what it wants to do. But it is advice. If it was crystal clear, we'd read it to you, but I don't think this one is. But I will research it. I know what you want to do. I will research it further and report back to you.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you, Dave.
I will say, I noticed there where Jen read, it does say a roll call vote will be taken after deliberations so that it's clear which members are voting. So that's an important thing, because we have not been consistent all the time, except when Zoom came along on the roll call. So I think that would have to be part of the deal, to make sure we separate the actual members who are voting or authorized to vote for that meeting through a roll call.
But you can't have a roll call vote of alternates unless they've been specifically designated.
Yes.
Act as a member.
Right. Yep.
They don't participate in roll call votes.
No. But that separates or clarifies that they are in fact the board members and the alternates are the alternates. But they can participate in discussion.
I just want to make one final comment. Thank you guys for indulging me. I really do want to try to get this to go forward. But the other part is, as an alternate, if you're not participating in the full scope of the dialogue through the hearing, and we go into public and out of public like we have on some of these very recent cases, and then you're sitting in a position at the meeting where there's going to actually be a vote because full members aren't able to participate for whatever reason and aren't in attendance. You might be in a position where you're voting and you weren't really able to deliberate through the process of the hearing, even though you were in attendance, because you couldn't, when it went out of public, you couldn't speak, because that can happen. We just had a yield plan we voted on twice, right?
Yeah.
What if you were an alternate the first time, couldn't talk about it, and then tonight you had to vote on it? I mean, it just, to me, I think letting all of our members participate as much as possible is something we should try to encourage. If it doesn't put us in trouble, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah.
So thanks, Dave. Appreciate your follow up.
Okay. Dave, any master plan discussion tonight? No? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's late, so
okay.
I do have some stuff, but I can wait till the 10th.
Okay. Field modifications, bond letters,
none requested.
Well, have a nice.
I think it's important that the master plan oversight committee is, David, beginning to think about a very tender subject, and that's yield plans.
Well, it's open space development. We did let the planning board know that we're looking at, the open space development in a couple of the problem areas that we've been having. So the board is aware of that, and we did discuss it at the last meeting. But I did recommend that the board at the next meeting, the committee at the next meeting, take a tour. And I've identified a bunch of places because I think the planning board does a lot of review and looks at a lot of plans. But what I do is I always go out after the fact because I go out for COs and inspections and actually see what's built. So I have that relationship. And I asked the committee members, I said, how would you like to go out and pull some plans and go out to a site that's been built? And I heard that they don't really do that, and they would like to do that. So it's kind of, you can see, oh, I talked about that curbing there, or, just kind of
right.
And then I heard that, hey, I didn't think that was going to look like that. And I saw that, like that kind of thing. So we're going to do a tour of some conventional and open space development, because when you take a look at developments and you see what you like, what you don't like, and that the houses are too close together or not, or too far apart and so forth. And you can work with that in the regulations on things you don't like. And your existing.
We got a red roughshod over you, Aaron. You didn't have much to say about that.
So that's what. Well, I ended up just giving the update for the master plan oversight committee.
Okay. Well, I want to wish everybody a nice Memorial Day weekend. Be safe. Enjoy the sunshine.
And you too.
Hey, Dave, can you stay on for 2 seconds?
Sure. 2 seconds. That's it. Yes.